Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt a strange sense of disconnect? As if the person staring back at you is merely playing a role, a character they were assigned long ago and have since forgotten how to abandon. Perhaps you feel it in the quiet moments, after the noise of the day has faded. A subtle but persistent hum of emptiness. A feeling that something vital is missing. Even when your life, from the outside, looks perfectly complete. This feeling is not a flaw in your character. It is not a sign of failure, but rather a symptom of the modern soul, a quiet epidemic of fragmentation. From our earliest days, we are taught to curate ourselves, to present a version of our being that is acceptable, agreeable, and worthy of love. We learn to take the parts of us deemed too messy, too loud, too angry, too sad, or too strange, and we lock them away in the basement of our psyche. But these parts do not disappear. They coalesce in the darkness, gaining strength, forming a powerful, unseen force known as the shadow. This hidden self, this collection of all we have disowned, does not lie dormant. It silently directs our lives. It fuels our unexplained anxieties. It engineers our self-sabotage. And it authors the repeating, painful patterns in our relationships and our choices. It is the ghost in our machine. This journey we are about to embark upon, this work, is not a battle against that darkness. It is not an exorcism of demons. Think of it, instead, as a reclamation, a sacred treasure hunt into the depths of your own being. Shadow work is the act of taking up the torch of your own awareness and having the courage to walk down into that basement. Not to vanquish what you find, but to understand it, to listen to it, and to bring its lost treasures back into the light of your conscious life. This is not a journey of becoming someone new, but of remembering and reclaiming who you have been all along. Consider these words a map, a guide, and a steady companion for the most important adventure you will ever take, the journey home, to your whole and undivided self. It begins as a subtle sensation, like the feeling of a presence in a room you have just entered. Even when you know you are alone, it is not a frightening presence, not a ghost in the traditional sense, but an absence so profound it feels like a presence itself. It is the echo of a sound that was never made, the faint, persistent resonance of a missing part of you. This is the first whisper of the lost self, the initial, quiet acknowledgement that the person you are and the person you were meant to be are standing on opposite sides of a vast, silent canyon. To acknowledge the lost self is to admit that the life you are living feels, in some fundamental way, like a performance. The script is well rehearsed. The costumes are immaculate. The stage is set perfectly. But you, the lead actor, I feel a growing sense of alienation from your own lines. You are speaking words written by someone else, by your parents, your teachers, your culture, your fears. The real you, the one who knows the true dialogue of your soul, is locked away backstage. And you are beginning to hear the faint sound of it, rattling at the door. This lost self is not a single, definable entity we can pinpoint and retrieve. It is, rather, a state of profound inauthenticity, a quiet dissonance between the vibrant, complex symphony of your inner world and the muted, one-note melody you play for the world to hear. It is the cumulative effect of 1,000 tiny concessions, a million moments where you chose safety over truth, acceptance over authenticity. It is the life unlived, the words unsaid, the risks untaken, and it haunts the present as a chronic, low-grade ache, a spiritual homesickness. The symptoms of this condition are woven so deeply into the fabric of our modern lives that we often mistake them for normalcy. The most pervasive of these is a chronic sense of emptiness. This is not the sharp, identifiable pain of grief, but a dull, gray hollowness, a lack of color and texture in the tapestry of your days. You might achieve a goal you have worked towards for years and feel a brief flicker of satisfaction, only to have it dissolve into the familiar fog of what's next. You might be surrounded by friends and family, laughing at a joke, and suddenly feel a sense of profound separation, as if you are watching your own life from behind a sheet of glass. This emptiness is the space that the lost self is supposed to occupy. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the soul. Another powerful symptom is the relentless drive of the people-pleaser. The people-pleaser is a master chameleon, adept at sensing the expectations of others and mirroring them back flawlessly. This is a survival strategy learned early in life. A child discovers that certain parts of their authentic self, their spontaneous anger, their wild creativity, their quiet sensitivity, are met with disapproval or punishment. They learn, with heartbreaking precision, that love and acceptance are conditional. And so, they begin the great act of editing. They trim away the inconvenient parts of themselves. They sand down their rough edges, and they present a polished, agreeable version to the world. For a time, this works, but the cost is immense. It requires a state of hypervigilance, a constant monitoring of others for cues of approval or disapproval. It breeds a deep, buried resentment, because the love you receive is not for the real you, but for the carefully constructed mask you wear, and it is utterly exhausting. This lifelong performance, leaving you with no energy left for your own desires, your own needs, your own life. Hand in hand with this goes a profound lack of passion. Passion is a life force energy. It is wild and untamed. In our effort to become good and acceptable, we build dams to contain the so-called negative emotions, like rage and grief. But the soul's emotional landscape is an interconnected watershed. When you dam one river, you lower the water level everywhere. In cutting ourselves off from our capacity for righteous anger, we inadvertently sever our connection to its twin, passionate creation. In numbing our ability to feel deep sorrow, we also numb our capacity for ecstatic joy. Life becomes a series of obligations, a checklist of duties to be performed. The fire in the belly, the spark that makes you feel truly alive, dwindles to a pilot light, barely perceptible, always at risk of being extinguished by the slightest breeze of conformity. Perhaps the most intimate and painful symptom is the imposter syndrome. This is the secret, unshakable belief that you are a fraud, and that at any moment, you will be found out. It persists despite all external evidence to the contrary. You can be showered with accolades, promotions, and praise, but inside, a terrified voice whispers, if they only knew the real me, if they only knew how incompetent, how unworthy, how broken I truly am, they would take it all away. This is the voice of the mask wearer. It is the rational fear that the persona you have created is fragile, and that beneath it lies the unacceptable, exiled self. This feeling is not arrogance in disguise. It is the deep, intuitive knowledge that you are not living in alignment with your own truth. You feel like an imposter because, in a way, you are. You are acting in a role you were never meant to play. Consider the story of a man we will call Arthur. Arthur was a brilliant architect, renowned for his visionary designs. His buildings pierced the sky, elegant structures of glass and steel that won him awards and the admiration of his peers. He lived in a penthouse apartment that was the epitome of minimalist perfection. A space so clean and ordered it felt more like a gallery than a home. He had wealth, respect, and a string of beautiful, transient partners. By all external measures, he was a resounding success. But at night, alone in his silent, perfect apartment, Arthur felt a terrifying void. The emptiness was so vast it seemed to suck the very air from the room. he realized he designed magnificent, soulful spaces for others, but his own inner and outer life was sterile, devoid of warmth, of clutter, of life. He was a people pleaser in his work, intuiting what clients wanted and giving it to them with genius. But he had no idea what he himself wanted. The passion he had for his craft was the only passion he had left. And even that was beginning to feel like a duty. He walked through his life with the persistent, gnawing fear that he was a hollow man, that his great buildings were just an elaborate compensation for his own inner vacancy. His journey of healing did not begin with a dramatic collapse, but with a quiet admission in the dark. He simply acknowledged the echo in the room. He acknowledged the lost self. So where did all these lost parts go? Where is the untamed passion? The righteous anger? The wild creativity? The vulnerable sensitivity? They were not destroyed. They were simply banished. Every time you were told to be nice instead of being honest. Every time you were taught that your dreams were unrealistic. Every time you chose to numb a painful feeling instead of honoring it. You exiled a piece of yourself. These exiled parts were cast out into the wilderness of the psyche, the uncharted territory we call the shadow. The shadow is the container of the lost self. It is a living, dynamic part of you, a subterranean kingdom populated by all the aspects of your being that you were taught you had to hide in order to survive. This is not your fault. It is a fundamental part of the human experience. The price we pay for being social creatures. We all have a shadow. The act of acknowledging your lost self and of feeling its absence is not an admission of a unique personal failure. It is the first, crucial step of a hero's journey. It is a sign that you are waking up, that you are ready to stop performing. You have heard the echo from the other side of the canyon. Now, you must find the courage to turn and face the darkness where it originates. You must be willing to finally, formally, define the shadow. The word itself, shadow, comes to us already heavy with meaning. It whispers of darkness, of things that are sinister, hidden, and best left undisturbed. Our primal instincts tell us to stay in the light, to fear what lurks in the unseen corners of the world. And so, it is natural to approach this concept with a degree of hesitation, with a feeling that we are about to confront the villain of our own story. But the first and most crucial truth we must grasp is this: the shadow is not evil. It is not a monster to be slain or a demon to be exorcised. It is simply, and profoundly, the unknown side of you, the great pioneer of this inner territory. Carl Jung described the shadow as everything that a person has no conscious knowledge of. It is the vast, unseen portion of the iceberg that lies beneath the waterline of our awareness. Imagine you are on a lifelong journey, and on your back, you carry a large, sturdy sack. From the moment you are born, anytime you stumble upon a part of yourself that you are taught is unacceptable, you place it in the sack without a second thought. Your raw, unfiltered anger goes into the sack. Your profound vulnerability goes into the sack. Your secret envy, your untamed sexuality, your lazy afternoons, your unconventional dreams, your divine creativity, your capacity for ruthlessness, your deep need for connection, all of it, piece by piece, gets tossed over your shoulder into the darkness. You do this so you can travel lighter, so you can fit in with the other travelers. But the bag is never truly left behind. It is always with you, growing heavier with each passing year. And its contents, stirring in the dark, have a powerful gravity that influences your every step, whether you are aware of it or not. The shadow is this sack, and its contents are not just lead. There is just as much gold. To truly understand this, let us use a metaphor. Imagine that your psyche, your entire being, is a vast and multi-leveled house. The person you know as yourself, your conscious identity or ego, is the resident of this house. But this resident is a creature of habit and comfort. They live exclusively on the main floor. In the well-lit living room, the tidy kitchen, and the presentable guest rooms. This is the part of you that you show to the world. The persona you have carefully curated. You keep the windows clean, the floors polished, and you know where every piece of furniture is. But this house has a basement. The door to it is at the end of a dark hallway, and it has been locked for a very long time. As the resident, you are vaguely aware of it, but you have no desire to go down there. You've heard strange noises from it at night. You imagine it is damp, full of spiders, mold, and forgotten, broken things. This basement is your personal shadow. How did it become so full? The process began before you could even speak. Your parents were the first interior decorators of your house. With every interaction, they taught you which parts of yourself were acceptable: living room, furniture. When you threw a tantrum, expressing pure, unadulterated rage, you were told, "That's ugly. Nice children don't act like that." And so, the raw power of your anger was taken down and tossed into the basement. When you cried with a heartbreaking sensitivity to the world, you might have been told to toughen up. And so, your deep empathy and vulnerability were relegated to the dark. Your boundless, messy creativity, your loud, boisterous joy, your quiet, introspective stillness. Anything that didn't fit the blueprint of the family you were born into was systematically moved out of sight. You were not a bad child. You were an adaptable one, learning the fundamental rule for survival: to be loved. I must hide these parts of me. As you grew, society took over the role of decorator. Schools, friends, television, and culture at large handed you new blueprints for the ideal house. Ambition and assertiveness were praised in one gender but discouraged in another. So those traits were thrown into the basement by half the population. The Siri for a quiet, simple life was deemed lazy or uninspired in a culture that worships frantic productivity. So that peaceful part of the self was locked away. Your unique spiritual curiosities, your quirky sense of humor, your secret love for things deemed childish or weird. All of it was deemed unfit for the main floor of a successful adult life. Traumatic events, the deep wounds of betrayal, neglect, or abuse, are like burst pipes or fires in the house. Lacking the tools to repair the damage at the time, the resident simply boards up that entire wing, pretending it doesn't exist. And the painful memories, along with all the emotions attached to them, become the most feared and volatile contents of the deep, dark cellar. This brings us to a vital distinction. The basement of your own house, filled with your personal history, is your personal shadow. Its contents are unique to you. But if you were to find a way to dig through the floor of your own basement, you would discover something startling. You would find that your basement connects to a network of tunnels, ancient catacombs that run beneath all the houses in the entire neighborhood. This is the collective shadow. It contains the repressed darkness, not just of one individual, but of an entire culture, of all humanity. It is the home of the great, fearsome archetypes: the tyrant, the saboteur, the witch, the zealot. It is the repository of humanity's capacity for violence, for prejudice, for greed. When we see these patterns play out on the world stage, in wars and injustices, we are witnessing the eruption of the collective shadow, the shared darkness that humanity has refused to confront. What, then, is the danger of simply keeping the basement door locked? One might think that what is out of sight is out of mind. But the house does not work that way. The contents of the shadow do not lie dormant. The dampness and mold of repressed anger and grief will begin to creep up the walls of the living room, creating ugly stains on your relationships that you cannot explain. The smell becomes pervasive. And yet, because you refuse to acknowledge its source, You will insist it is coming from your neighbor's house. This is the mechanism of projection. We take the disowned contents of our own basement, and we see them with vivid, undeniable clarity, everywhere else but in ourselves. That person at work who is so arrogant, they are mirroring the healthy self-confidence you were taught to repress. That group of people you deem lazy, they are reflecting your own desperate, unowned need for rest. Your shadow is projected onto the screen of the world, and you become a critic in a movie theater, shouting at the characters, entirely unaware that you are the one running the projector. Worse still, the pressure in the basement builds on a perfectly normal Tuesday, when you are simply trying to live on your pristine main floor. The basement door can suddenly burst open. This is the inexplicable, volcanic eruption of rage over a trivial matter. This is the sudden, overwhelming wave of anxiety that paralyzes you before a presentation. This is the compulsive, self-destructive act, the affair, the binge, the gamble that shatters the perfect life you have built. These are not random acts of madness. They are the desperate, starved cries for attention from the exiled parts of you. They are the shadow, breaking through its containment, demanding to be seen. When this happens, the very foundations of the house begin to crack, and the life you have so carefully constructed becomes unstable and unsafe. Therefore, the work we are called to do is not to reinforce the lock on the basement door. It is not to pour concrete down the stairs. The work is to find the courage to become the master of the entire house. Not just the presentable parts. It is to take a lantern of self-compassion, to find the old, rusty key of curiosity, and to willingly turn the lock. The goal is to walk down the stairs, to breathe in the musty air of your own history, and to begin, gently, to sort through what is there. It is to hold a broken toy from your childhood and grieve. It is to find a powerful, rusty tool and learn how to clean it and use its strength. And it is to discover, in a dusty, forgotten chest, the gleaming, priceless heirlooms of your own soul, the golden parts of yourself you discarded long ago, mistaking them for worthless junk. Understanding the shadow is one thing, but the key to unlocking its door is hidden in plain sight, reflected in the faces of those we judge and those we admire. It lies in the world we project around us. The world you perceive is not a window. It is a mirror. You walk through your days surrounded by reflective surfaces, but you have been taught to believe you are looking out at a fixed, objective reality. The people who infuriate you, the ones who trigger a disproportionate rage or irritation deep within your bones, are not merely external annoyances. They are mirrors reflecting the disowned parts of your own basement. The people you place on a pedestal, the ones you admire with a burning, worshipful awe, are not simply talented outsiders. They are mirrors reflecting the gleaming, undeveloped gold you have locked away within yourself. This is the profound and often unsettling truth of psychological projection, the primary mechanism by which the shadow makes itself known. Projection is an unconscious act of self-defense. It is far more comfortable for the ego, the resident of your house, to spot a flaw in the neighbor's yard than to admit the foundation of its own home is cracking. And so, it takes the inconvenient and painful contents of your own psyche, loads them into a projector, and shines them onto the blank screen of the people around you. Your intense emotional reaction is the light of that projector, illuminating your own hidden story for all to see, though you yourself are the last to recognize it. Let us first speak of the most common form of this phenomenon, the negative shadow projection. Think for a moment of a person in your life, or a public figure, who elicits a strong, visceral, negative reaction from you. It is not a mild dislike, but a charge of energy, a heat that rises in your chest. Perhaps it is the colleague who seems insufferably arrogant, always dominating conversations with an unshakable confidence. Perhaps it is the social media influencer, whose life seems so curated, so performative, so fake. Or maybe it is the family member you judge as hopelessly lazy, seemingly content to drift through life without ambition. The specific judgment does not matter as much as the intensity of your emotional charge. A charge of this magnitude is a bright red flag, a signal from your soul that you are in the presence of a part of your own disowned self. The work here is to ask the terrifying, illuminating question, how am I like that? This question is not an accusation. It is an investigation. Let us take the story of a woman we can call Sarah. A diligent, hardworking graphic designer who was utterly consumed with hatred for her coworker, Mark. In her eyes, Mark was the epitome of laziness. He arrived at 9 and left at 5 on the dot. He took his full lunch break. He never volunteered for extra work. Sarah, by contrast, worked through lunch, stayed late, and was constantly checking her email on weekends. Mark's placid contentment was like a lit match to her internal gasoline. Her complaints about him dominated her conversations with her friends and partner. She was obsessed. One day, prompted by this very teaching, she decided to try an exercise. She wrote down Mark's offending quality. He is lazy and lacks ambition. Then, she sat with the question, how am I also lazy and lacking ambition? Her initial reaction was outrage. It felt like a lie. But she stayed with the inquiry, turning it over and over. She rephrased it, what part of me is terrified of being seen as lazy? And there, the truth cracked open. Sarah realized that she had so deeply internalized the belief that her worth was solely dependent on her productivity, that she had completely disowned her own need for rest, for leisure, for unstructured being. Mark, in his simple act of honoring the boundary between work and life, was a living embodiment of the very freedom she denied herself. Her rage was not truly at him. It was the scream of her own exhausted, repressed self. The part of her that desperately wanted to leave at 5 o'clock, to take a full lunch, to simply be. What she called his laziness was in fact her own undeveloped and starved capacity for rest. His behavior mirrored her own deep imbalance, and she hated the reflection because she could not yet face the truth of her own self-imposed prison. Now, let us turn the mirror around to see its more beautiful and equally important reflection. This is the projection of the golden shadow. Think of a person you deeply, almost obsessively, admire. Perhaps it is an artist whose creativity seems to flow from a divine source. Perhaps it is an activist whose courage is so absolute it seems superhuman. Perhaps it is a friend who walks into any room and commands it with an effortless charisma that leaves you feeling clumsy and shy in comparison. This intense admiration, this feeling of, I could never be that, is the flip side of the same coin. You are projecting your own highest potential onto them. The qualities you worship in them are the very qualities that lie dormant in your own soul, waiting to be recognized. We are drawn to them, magnetized by them, because our own inner gold is calling out to itself. We think we are admiring them, when in fact, we are experiencing a profound homesickness for our own unrealized greatness. If you are a quiet person who is mesmerized by a friend's public speaking ability, it is not because you are destined to be a silent observer. It is because the seed of an eloquent orator lies within you. You admire their courage so intensely because your own courage, perhaps silenced by a childhood wound, recognizes its own nature. You are seeing your potential, fully realized, in the mirror of another person. This understanding moves us from a place of passive judgment and admiration into a field of active self-discovery. We can now perform a sacred practice. Take a moment, either with a journal or in the quiet of your own mind. First, bring to mind that person who triggers you. Name the specific quality that ignites your frustration. Not a vague insult, but a precise label: arrogance, neediness, dishonesty, superficiality. Now, hold that word and ask, with genuine curiosity. Where does this quality live in me? Even if only 1%, or where in my life am I so terrified of embodying this quality that I have run to its opposite extreme? This is how you begin to take back the projection. You are not condoning bad behavior in the world. You are simply acknowledging that your emotional charge is your own responsibility. A clue from your unconscious. Next, perform the second half of the ritual. Bring to mind the person you place on a pedestal. Write down the specific golden qualities that you find so captivating: courage, creativity, discipline, grace, authenticity. Look at this list. This is not a catalog of what you lack. This is a treasure map to your own soul. These are the names of the exiled nobility living in your shadow. Your assignment is not to continue worshiping them from afar, but to ask, what is one small, tangible step I can take this week to embody a tiny fraction of this quality? If it is courage, perhaps your step is to speak up in one meeting. If it is creativity, perhaps it is to buy a small sketchbook and draw for 5 minutes. You are not trying to become them. You are trying to become more fully yourself. By engaging in this practice, the world transforms. It ceases to be a hostile or intimidating place filled with annoying people and godlike heroes. It becomes your personal feedback system, a living, breathing guide to your own inner landscape. Every irritation becomes an invitation for introspection. Every spark of admiration becomes a call to action. You stop bleeding your power and energy outward in the form of judgment and envy. You begin to draw that energy back into yourself, using it to fuel your own healing and growth. We are ceasing the pointless act of trying to wipe the mirror clean. And instead, we are using the reflection to learn about the face that is staring back. Recognizing our projections is the powerful act of cleaning this mirror, of taking responsibility for what we see. And once the mirror is clean, we can begin to gaze deeper, to ask not just what we see, but why it was ever hidden from us in the first place. A journey that inevitably leads us back to the first rooms we ever knew. The world did not teach you to fear parts of yourself. Your family did. Before society, before school, before the vast and complex mirror of the world, there was the small, intense, and all-encompassing universe of your family home. This was the first world you ever knew, and its laws were as absolute as gravity. It was here, in the crucible of your earliest relationships, that the great sorting process began. It was here that you first learned that to be loved, you had to be a carefully edited version of yourself. To understand the contents of your shadow, you must become a gentle archaeologist of your own past, excavating the ruins of your childhood, not with a sledgehammer of blame, but with the delicate brush of curiosity. Your psyche is like an ancient city, built layer upon layer over time. To understand the strange layout of the streets you walk today, you must dig down to the original city plan, the foundational grid that was laid down in your first home. Every family is a small civilization with its own unique culture, its own climate, and its own unwritten constitution. These laws are rarely spoken aloud. They are communicated through the atmosphere, through what is praised and what is punished, through what is met with warm acceptance and what is met with a cold, terrifying silence. This is the first and most powerful shadow factory. Parents, in most cases, are not malicious wardens, intentionally locking away the best parts of their children. They are often unconscious transmitters of the laws they were forced to live by, passing down a blueprint for survival that they themselves never had the chance to question. They hand you a copy of their own edited rulebook, believing it will keep you safe and loved. And so, the legacy of the shadow is passed down through generations, an inheritance of silence and suppression. The core of this transmission comes in the form of family slogans or messages about emotions. These messages become the operating code of our young minds. Consider the classic slogan, "Boys don't cry." The message is not about the physical act of shedding tears. The message is that vulnerability is weakness, that a boy's inner world of grief, fear, and tender sadness is shameful and must be violently suppressed. The boy who successfully internalizes this code grows into a man who has amputated his own heart. His sadness, now a part of his shadow, may fester into depression, or his unexpressed vulnerability may curdle into rage. He has lost access to the full spectrum of his own humanity. Consider the counterpart. Good girls are nice and shouldn't get angry. The message here is that female assertiveness, righteous fury, and clear boundaries are unladylike and threatening. The girl who abides by this law learns to swallow her truth, to smile when she wants to scream. She becomes a people pleaser, and her anger, denied a healthy outlet, gets locked in the basement. From there, it may leak out as passive aggression, gossip, or even manifest in the body as chronic pain or autoimmune disease. Think of the other slogans. Don't be so dramatic. Translation: your feelings are invalid and too much for us to handle. Don't air our dirty laundry. Translation: we must maintain a facade of perfection at all costs. And your authentic struggles are a source of shame. Take a moment and listen. What were the unspoken mottos of your first civilization? What emotions were celebrated, and which were forbidden? The answer to that question is a direct map to the largest continents in your shadow. To enforce these laws, family systems often unconsciously assign roles to children, particularly in households with high levels of stress or dysfunction. These are not roles that are ever spoken of, but they are performed with unwavering commitment. A child will instinctively do whatever it takes to keep the fragile family system in balance. In adopting a role, we are forced to sacrifice vast parts of our authentic self. See if you recognize yourself. There is the hero child, who carries the family's hopes and dreams. They are responsible, accomplished, and a source of pride. They learn that their value comes from what they achieve. The sacrifice, their right to be messy, to fail, to be irresponsible, and to simply be playful is banished to the shadow. They become adults who don't know how to rest, their self-worth chained to their next accomplishment. Then there is the scapegoat, the child who carries the family's disowned darkness. They are labeled the problem child, the troublemaker, the one who is always acting out. They are often the most sensitive and honest member of the family, reacting authentically to a dysfunctional environment. But the system designates them as the sole source of the problem. The sacrifice, their innocence, their goodness, and their competence are rendered invisible. They internalize the belief that they are fundamentally bad, and their true, capable self goes into the shadow. Next is the peacemaker, the child who becomes the family's emotional barometer. Hypersensitive to conflict, they dedicate their young lives to mediating disputes, soothing hurt feelings, and managing the emotional state of their caregivers. The sacrifice, their own needs are completely erased. Their own anger, their own opinions, their right to take a side or to not be involved at all are deemed selfish. They become adults who are terrified of conflict and lose themselves in the needs of others. Finally, there is the lost child, who discovers that the safest way to navigate a chaotic family is to disappear. They become quiet, self-sufficient, and invisible, placing no demands on the stressed system. The sacrifice, their passions, their voice, their creativity, and their need for connection and attention are locked away. They become adults who feel invisible and have trouble asking for what they want, believing on a deep level that their needs don't matter. Let us imagine a man named David. David grew up as the peacemaker in a home where his parents had a cold, silent marriage. Anger was the ultimate forbidden emotion. Conflict was never addressed, only buried under a thick blanket of tense civility. David became an expert at diffusing tension, at being the good, easy kid. As an adult, everyone describes David as the nicest guy they know. But at work, he is consumed with passive-aggressive rage at his colleagues. And in his marriage, He is bewildered by his wife's complaints that he is emotionally distant and that their relationship lacks passion. David is unconsciously replaying his family's script. He is so terrified of direct conflict, the great taboo of his childhood, that he cannot express his needs, set boundaries, or engage in the passionate, sometimes difficult exchanges that create true intimacy. His anger and his passion, the sacrificed parts of his peacemaker role, are deep in his shadow, poisoning his relationships from the inside out. We are all, in some way, like David. The family system is the rehearsal stage. Our adult life is the premiere performance. We unconsciously seek out friends, partners, and professional situations that allow us to continue playing our assigned role. We are not seeking pain. We are driven by a deep, unconscious desire to finally resolve the original story, to heal the first wound by recreating it. A hero child may be drawn to a partner who needs saving, allowing them to continue their role as the capable one. A lost child might find themselves in a large company where they can easily be overlooked, perpetuating their pattern of invisibility without awareness. We are simply ghosts in our own machine, reenacting a play whose lines we learned so long ago we've forgotten they were ever taught to us. The purpose of this archaeology of the self is not to get stuck in the past or to live in a state of perpetual blame. Blame is the ego's dead-end street. It leads nowhere. The true goal is empowerment through understanding. When an archaeologist uncovers the foundations of an ancient city, they don't blame the original builders for the eventual collapse. They study the design to understand the structure. By understanding the original blueprint of your psyche, you, the current architect of your life, can begin to make conscious renovations. You can see which foundational walls are no longer load-bearing. You can decide to knock down the interior walls that have kept you confined, to open new windows to let in light, and to build entirely new wings onto your home that reflect the magnificent, a whole person you are today, not just the edited child you had to be to survive. And as we sift through this sacred soil of our own past, clearing away the rubble of old beliefs and family roles, we will inevitably find, at the very bottom layer, a small, tender figure, buried but perfectly preserved. It is the version of you that experienced all of this for the first time. It is the guardian of your original wounds and your original wonder. To truly heal, we must now pause our digging and stoop down to finally meet this central character in our story, the inner child. Within every adult, no matter how cynical, accomplished, or weathered by life, there lives a child. This is not merely a sentimental metaphor. It is a psychological and neurological truth. Deep within your psyche, a version of you exists that is forever young. This is your inner child, the original self you were before the world began its relentless process of editing. Before you learned the painful calculus of conditional love, this child is the keeper of your innate wonder, the source of your spontaneous creativity, the wellspring of your purest joy. It is the part of you that knows how to be fully present in a moment, to marvel at an insect on a leaf, to laugh from the belly, to love without reservation. This is the divine child, a font of pure, life-affirming energy. But this child is also the silent guardian of your deepest wounds. It is the part of you that holds every memory of being unheard, unseen, invalidated, or abandoned. It is the vulnerable self that absorbed the shocks and sorrows of your early life, and it carries the echoes of that pain into the present. Our task is not to rescue this child, as if it were a helpless victim. Our task is to finally meet it, to acknowledge it, to listen to it, and to become the wise, loving, and fiercely protective parent that it has always been waiting for. For many of us, this inner child is not a joyful playmate, but a wounded sovereign who secretly runs our lives from a place of fear and unmet need. The evidence of a wounded inner child is written all over our adult behavior. If we have the eyes to see it, consider your emotional reactions. Have you ever been given some mild feedback at work and felt a wave of shame so profound it felt like a public execution? Have you ever had a partner ask for a little space and felt a panic so primal it felt like a life or death? Abandonment, when your emotional reaction is vastly out of proportion to the present-day trigger. You are no longer operating from your adult self. The wounded inner child has stormed the cockpit. For the child within, that mild feedback is not just feedback. It is the voice of a critical parent telling them they are not good enough. That request for space is not a simple need. It is the terror of being left alone. A pain it remembers with cellular precision. The fear of abandonment is one of the most common signs that your inner child is in distress. It manifests as a constant, low-grade anxiety in relationships. It is the need for constant reassurance, the compulsive checking of your phone, the over-analysis of every word in silence. It can lead to clinging behavior, an attempt to fuse with your partner to prevent them from ever leaving. Or, it can lead to its opposite, pushing people away and ending relationships prematurely. A preemptive strike to avoid the unbearable pain of being the one who is left. In either case, it is the terrified child, who once felt catastrophically alone, trying to manage an adult relationship with a child's survival tools. This wounded part also drives an insatiable need for external validation. It is the child who learned that love, safety, and worth were conditional upon performance. As an adult, this translates into a desperate hunt for praise, for promotions, for likes on social media. Your adult self may achieve incredible things, but the inner child never feels truly full, because the validation is always coming from the outside. It is a hunger that can never be satisfied, because the only approval that will ultimately heal the wound is the approval that comes from within. Let us be gentle with ourselves as we approach this tender part of our being. This is not a confrontation, but a homecoming. So how do we begin to meet this child? We must do it with the utmost patience and reverence. As one would approach a shy and untrusting fawn in the forest, one of the most powerful pathways is through guided meditation or visualization. Imagine, for a moment, a woman named Clara. Clara is successful, intelligent, and in control of her life. But she suffers from a deep, unnamed anxiety. Guided by these teachings, she sits quietly, closes her eyes, and imagines herself walking down a long hallway lined with doors, each one representing a year of her life. She walks back, past her tumultuous teenage years, past her awkward school days, until she reaches the door marked with the number 7. She opens it and finds herself in her childhood bedroom. And there, in the corner, is a small girl with Clara's face, hugging her knees to her chest, looking away. This is her inner child. Clara's first instinct is to rush over, to fix it, to talk to it. But she remembers the instruction to be gentle. So, she simply sits on the floor across the room and waits, broadcasting nothing but safety and acceptance. At first, the child does not move. It has been alone for a very long time and does not trust this sudden appearance of its adult self. This is the first, crucial step. Simply being present without demand. Another pathway is through the written word. We can write a letter to our inner child. Clara, in her journal, writes, "To my little one, I am so sorry. I am sorry I left you alone for so long. I was scared, and I didn't know how to take care of you. But I am here now. I promise to listen. I promise to keep you safe." Then, to bypass the critical adult mind, she takes the pen in her non-dominant hand and invites the child to write back. The writing is clumsy, slow. The first time, only 3 words appear on the page. "You went away." It is an accusation born of deep pain. It is the truth. This simple act can unlock decades of suppressed emotion. Looking at childhood photographs is another potent method. Find a picture of yourself as a child. Not a posed, smiling photograph, but one where you can see the truth in your own eyes. Gaze at that child. What does he or she need to hear from you today? Speak it aloud. You are so loved. You did nothing wrong. You deserve to be happy. I've got you now. This act of speaking love to the past begins to repave the neural pathways of the present. Through these practices, we slowly build trust. The ultimate goal is not just to comfort the child, but to actively reparent it. This is the sacred work of becoming your own loving parent. It means that when you, as an adult, feel that familiar wave of anxiety, shame, or fear, you learn to pause. You turn your attention inward and ask, "Hello, little one, what's wrong? What are you feeling right now?" You place a hand on your heart and you offer the words the child always needed to hear. I am here. You are safe. I am not going to leave you. Whatever you are feeling is okay. Reparenting means setting firm boundaries with people in your adult life. Not as an act of aggression towards them, but as a fierce act of protection for the sensitive child within you. It means allowing yourself to play, to be silly, to pursue a hobby for the sheer joy of it, feeding the divine child's need for unstructured wonder. It is a conscious, moment-by-moment commitment to providing yourself with the safety, validation, and unconditional love that you may not have received in the measure you needed. Eventually, for Clara, after weeks of patient, silent visits, of writing letters, of offering reassurance, something shifts in her meditation. She enters the room, and the little girl looks up at her. There is less fear in her eyes, and more curiosity. Clara slowly extends her hand, and the child, her own inner child, gets up and walks towards her, placing its small hand in her own. The connection is made. The integration has begun. Reconnecting with your inner child is like inviting a shy, precious being back into the home of your body and soul. Your primary responsibility now is to ensure that home is a true sanctuary. This begins with the conscious and deliberate act of creating a sacred space, both inside and out, where the work of healing can unfold in absolute safety. To venture into the vast, uncharted ocean of the unconscious is not a casual act. It is a deep-sea dive into the very foundations of your being. You would not explore a sunken trench in the Pacific Ocean by simply jumping over the side of a boat in your street clothes. To do so would be reckless, foolish, and profoundly dangerous. Instead, you would prepare with the utmost respect for the power and mystery of the deep. You would check your equipment, monitor the weather, ensure your vessel was sound, and maintain a constant, reliable connection to the surface. The same reverence and meticulous preparation are required for the sacred journey of shadow work. Before you can meet what lies in the depths, you must first create a sanctuary, a safe harbor from which to embark, and to which you can always return. This creation of a sacred space is not a mere suggestion. It is a non-negotiable prerequisite for authentic, sustainable healing. The first layer of this sanctuary is your own body. Your body is the vessel for this entire journey, the submersible that will carry your consciousness into the deep. It must be treated with care. Do not attempt this work when you are exhausted, hungry, or unwell. Ensure you are rested and nourished. This is a practical act of self-love that signals to your nervous system that you are safe and supported. The space you choose for your practice is the boat from which you will dive. It does not need to be a grand temple. It can be a simple corner of your bedroom, a confortable armchair, or even your parked car in a quiet location. The only absolute requirements are privacy and the guarantee that you will not be disturbed. This may mean having a direct conversation with your family or roommates. Stating your need for an hour of uninterrupted quiet is not selfish. It is a radical act of claiming your right to your own inner life. When you close the door, you are not just shutting out the world. You are creating a boundary, a visible and energetic seal that says, "This time and this space are sacred." This is for me. With the physical container established, we must then turn to the creation of mental and emotional safety. This is your internal dive plan, and its cornerstone is your intention. Before each session of inner work, you must set a clear, compassionate intention. This can be spoken aloud, whispered, or written down. It is an invocation, a prayer to your own highest self. It might sound something like this: my intention for this time is to meet myself with unconditional love and radical curiosity. My goal is not to fix, to banish, or to judge, but to understand. I ask to be shown only what I am ready to heal. And I ask for the courage and compassion to be with whatever arises. This act of setting an intention shifts the entire dynamic. You are no longer a fearful trespasser in your own psyche. You are a gentle explorer, a loving archaeologist on a sacred mission. You are explicitly telling your inner world that you come in peace. This is a space of amnesty. The inner critic, that relentless judge who has policed your thoughts for years, must be politely asked to wait outside the door. This space is a judgment-free zone. Whatever you discover, the rage, the shame, the pettiness, the fear is met with the same neutral, compassionate curiosity. It is all just information, energy to be understood, not a verdict on your worth. Once the intention is set, you can begin to assemble your tools, the equipment that will make your dive safer and more profound. The most vital of these is a journal, which will serve as your captain's logbook. It is here you will record your discoveries, transcribe dialogues, and track your journey. But other tools can help create an atmosphere conducive to deep work, signaling to your senses and your soul that you are shifting from ordinary time to sacred time. Consider light. Instead of harsh overhead lighting, perhaps light a single candle, a symbol of the single flame of awareness you are bringing into the darkness. Consider sound. For some, complete silence is best. For others, gentle, ambient music without lyrics, or the resonant frequencies of binaural beats, can help soothe the nervous system and facilitate a shift in consciousness. Consider scent, the most primal of our senses, with its direct pathway to the limbic system and long-term memory. Burning incense like frankincense or sandalwood, or diffusing essential oils like lavender or cedar, can instantly signal to your brain that it is time to relax and turn inward. And consider touch. Wrap yourself in a soft, heavy blanket. The physical sensation of comfort and containment can create a profound sense of emotional safety. You are, in effect, swaddling yourself, giving your body the message of security that your inner child craves. This is not about empty ritual. It is about conscious environment creation. You are curating a sensory experience that tells every part of you, you are safe here. It is safe to feel. It is safe to go deep. Perhaps the most critical piece of your diving equipment is your safety line to the surface. This is the practice of grounding. When you dive into the emotional waters of the shadow, it is easy to become disoriented, to be swept away by a current of intense grief or rage, to lose all sense of the present moment. Grounding is the skill of intentionally anchoring your awareness back into the physical reality of the here and now. It is your emergency ascent procedure, your unbreakable tether to the safety of your boat. Before you begin any session, start with a grounding exercise. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring your full attention to the physical sensations of your body. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Feel your feet flat on the floor, imagining roots growing down from your soles into the core of the earth. Take 3 deep, slow breaths, feeling the air enter your lungs and leave your body. You can also use the 5 to 4 -3, -2 to 1 method. Silently name 5 things you can see in the room, 4 things you can feel with your skin, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This pulls your awareness out of the chaotic past and plants it firmly in the solid ground of the present. If During your inner work, an emotion becomes overwhelming and you feel you are losing control. You must use this safety line. Pause immediately. Open your eyes. Press your feet firmly into the floor. Place your hands on your thighs or on a solid surface and notice the pressure, the texture, the temperature. Breathe deeply and deliberately. Remind yourself, I am here. In this room. In this year. I am safe. This is a memory. An emotion. It is passing through me. But it is not me. Do not judge yourself for needing to pause. This is not a failure, it is a sign of profound self-respect. It is the skilled diver knowing when to stabilize before going deeper. Just as important is grounding after your session is complete. Do not simply close your journal and jump back into answering emails or making dinner. You need a period of decompression. Take a few minutes to stretch your body. Drink a glass of water, consciously feeling it go down your throat. If you can, step outside and feel the air on your face or the earth beneath your feet. Eating a small piece of fruit or a nut can also be very grounding. This transition period allows your nervous system to regulate and helps you integrate the experience you have just had, ensuring that the wisdom of the deep is not lost in the rush of returning to the surface world. Now, with the sanctity of our space assured, our intention set, and our anchor to the present moment firmly in hand, we can pick up the most powerful tool for this inner exploration. We can open the blank page of our journal, which will serve as the faithful logbook for our courageous descent into the deep. The blank page of a journal is not an empty space. It is a portal. It is a black mirror, waiting to reflect the hidden landscapes of your own soul. We are not approaching this practice as a diarist, dutifully recording the events of the day. We are approaching it as a mystic, a cartographer, an alchemist. The journal is your laboratory, your sanctuary, and your confidant. It is the one place in the universe where you can be utterly, completely, and unapologetically truthful. For its pages will never judge you, interrupt you, or betray your trust. Here, in this sacred space, we will learn to use the simple, ancient technology of pen and paper to open a direct line of communication with the vast, silent world of the shadow. The first and most fundamental technique is known as free writing, or the stream of consciousness. It is the act of opening the floodgates. The instructions are deceptively simple. Set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes. Place your pen on the page and begin writing. The only rule is that the pen must not stop moving until the timer goes off. You do not pause to think about what to say. You do not correct your spelling or grammar. You do not censor a single thought. If your mind goes blank, you write. My mind is blank. I don't know what to write. This is strange. Over and over until a new thought emerges. This practice is a powerful bypass of the ego, your conscious mind's vigilant gatekeeper. The gatekeeper loves order, logic, and looking good. Free writing starves it of the pauses it needs to interfere. What emerges is often a raw, unfiltered torrent of the psyche's chatter. It might be a jumble of anxieties, a forgotten memory from lunch, a sudden flash of anger, a line from a song. It doesn't matter. You are not writing for an audience. You are simply taking a core sample of your own mind, allowing the sediment from the bottom to swirl up to the surface where you can finally see it in the light. Once you are comfortable with this raw flow, you can move to a more focused and profound practice, a direct dialogue with a part of your shadow. This is where you consciously invite a specific aspect of your inner world into a conversation. Identify a feeling, a behavior, or a pattern that you struggle with. It could be your anxiety, your inner critics, your procrastination, or even a recurring physical pain. Let us take the story of a man named Alex, who was plagued by a sense of shame over his own procrastination. He viewed it as a monstrous flaw, a sign of his inherent laziness. In his journal, he decided to dialogue with it. He began by writing from his conscious self. The ego, me, procrastination. Why are you always here? You sabotage everything I try to do. I hate you. Then, he intentionally shifted his perspective. He let go of his own thoughts and invited an answer to flow from the part he had named procrastination. He let the pen move, trusting what emerged. Procrastination. I am not here to sabotage you. I am not your enemy. Me, then what are you doing? You make me feel worthless. Procrastination. I am here to protect you. When you get that surge of energy to work on your project, I create a feeling of profound tiredness. I make the television seem irresistible. I am keeping you safe. Me, safe from what? Procrastination. Safe from judgment. Safe from failure. If you never truly give this project your all, then if it fails, you can always say you didn't really try. If you never finish it, no one can ever call it mediocre. I am protecting your fragile, terrified heart from the shame of not being good enough. In that moment, Alex's entire world shifted. His procrastination was not a monster of laziness. It was a misguided, terrified bodyguard. A part of his shadow born from a deep fear of failure. He was not at war with a character flaw. He was in a relationship with a wounded part of himself. This realization changed everything. He could now approach this pattern not with hatred, but with compassion, and begin to address the root fear instead of just fighting the symptom. You can have these conversations with any part of you. Give it a name, ask it questions, and be brave enough to write down the answers that emerge from the silence. A third powerful technique is the practice of writing the unsent letter. This is a tool for profound emotional catharsis. There are certain feelings and truths that are too volatile or too vulnerable to be spoken directly to another person. The unsent letter creates a perfectly safe container for their expression. Choose a person to whom you have unspoken words. It could be a parent, a former lover, a child, a friend, someone who has passed away. It could even be a part of yourself, like your younger self, or your body. The golden rule is absolute. This letter will never be mailed. It will never be read by its recipient. This knowledge is your key to total freedom. Unleash everything. Do not be polite. Do not be fair. This is your space. Write the rage. Write the searing pain of your disappointment. Write the deep, sorrowful grief. Ask the questions you were never able to ask. State the needs that were never met. I am angry that you were never there for me. I am so hurt by what you said. And I never told you. What I needed you to do was to protect me. And you didn't. Pour every last ounce of your unspoken truth onto the page until you feel empty and clear. The purpose of this act is not to engage with the other person. The purpose is to allow the toxic, undigested emotion to move through your body, through your arm, through the pen, and onto the page. Once it is externalized, it loses its power over you. When you are finished, you can keep the letter, or you can choose to perform a ritual of release, such as safely burning it and watching the smoke carry your words away, or shredding it into tiny pieces, symbolizing the end of its hold on you. Finally, your journal is the perfect place to engage with the symbolic language of your unconscious through dream work. The shadow often communicates not in linear sentences, but in the rich, strange poetry of dreams. Keep your journal on your nightstand. When you wake up, before you even sit up or check your phone, grab your pen and write down everything you can remember. Do not worry if it makes sense. Write down fragments, images, feelings, colors, characters. Later in the day, you can revisit your notes, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a poem to be felt. Resist the urge to consult a generic dream dictionary. Your unconscious speaks in a dialect that is unique to you. A snake might mean one thing to one person and something entirely different to you. Engage with the symbols personally. Ask yourself, what does a crow mean to me? What is my personal association with the color blue? This house in the dream. Which part of my life does it feel like? Who does this mysterious figure feel like? By tracking these recurring images and your feelings about them, you begin to learn the specific vocabulary of your own soul. The journal becomes a Rosetta Stone for translating the wisdom of the deep. These technique-free writing, dialogue, insolitaires, and dream analysis are your tools for excavation. They are the brushes, the picks, and the trowels of your inner archaeology. On any given day, one may feel more appropriate than another. Trust your intuition. The page is waiting. It is a patient and loving friend, ready to receive the totality of who you are without flinching. Through its pages, we have now given a voice to the voiceless. We have begun to identify the great emotional currents that run beneath the surface of our lives. Now that we have named them, we must learn to feel them in our bodies. It is time to turn our full attention from the written word to the felt experience, and to face the oldest and most powerful guardian of the shadows gate, the primal energy of fear. In the mythology of your own soul, fear is the great dragon that guards the treasure. The treasure is your authentic life, your deepest love, if your boldest creation, your fullest potential. For most of your life, you have been taught that there are only two ways to deal with this dragon. The first is to flee, to see its smoking nostrils from a distance and turn back, abandoning the quest, convincing yourself that the treasure wasn't worth it anyway. The second is to attempt to slay it, to strap on your armor, draw your sword, and charge headfirst into a battle you can never win. A battle against a fundamental part of your own being. But there is a third way, a path of radical courage and profound wisdom. It is the path of the dancer. You do not run from the dragon, and you do not fight it. You sheath your sword. If you take a breath, and you learn the rhythm of its movement, you learn to dance with your fear. Our first step in this dance is to reframe our entire understanding of what fear is. Fear is not your enemy. It is not a weakness. Nor is it a pathology to be medicated into submission. Fear is one of the oldest, most intelligent, and most vital energies of your psyche. It is a primal messenger. Its sole purpose is to protect you. Its entire message, in its purest form, can be distilled into two simple words. Pay attention. The problem is not the fear itself. The problem is our relationship to it. We have been conditioned to react to its arrival with a secondary layer of panic and shame, turning a clean, simple signal into a debilitating state of anxiety. The work is not to stop the signal from arriving, but to learn how to receive its message with clarity and grace. To do this, we must first learn to distinguish between the two primary forms of fear. The first is real fear. This is clean, present moment fear. It is the saber-toothed tiger in the clearing, the car swerving into your lane. It is a direct, physiological response to an immediate threat to your physical survival. This fear is a gift. It hijacks your system for a few moments, flooding you with adrenaline and cortisol, sharpening your senses, and preparing your body to fight, flee, or freeze. It is designed to be experienced with ferocious intensity, and then, once the threat has passed, to be released completely, allowing your nervous system to return to a state of calm. We have very few saber-toothed tiger moments in our modern lives. The vast majority of what we call fear is the second kind, psychological fear. Psychological fear is the ghost of tigers past and the shadow of tigers yet to come. It is a creation of the mind, a story we tell ourselves. It is the fear of public speaking, which is the fear of future judgment. It is the fear of intimacy, which is the fear of future heartbreak, often based on the memory of past wounds. It is the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of not being good enough. This type of fear is not clean. It is sticky. It lingers. It manifests as a chronic, low-grade anxiety, a shapeless fog that drains our energy and limits our lives. This is the dragon we must learn to dance with. And our first step is to force it to take a single, definable shape. Fear thrives in the vagueness of what if. To diminish its power, you must drag it from the realm of the abstract into the world of the specific. This is the practice of naming your fear. When you feel that familiar cloud of anxiety descend, stop, take a breath, and ask yourself, with the precision of a scientist, what exactly am I afraid of right now? Do not settle for a vague answer like I'm worried about work. Go deeper. I am afraid that in the meeting tomorrow, my boss will ask me a question I can't answer. Deeper still, I am afraid that if I can't answer the question, my colleagues will see that I am an imposter. Deeper still, I am afraid that they will think I am incompetent, that I will be fired, that I will end up destitute and alone, and that I will feel a bottomless, unbearable shame. Suddenly, the shapeless, terrifying monster of anxiety is revealed to be a series of specific, albeit scary, thoughts. It is no longer a ghost. It has a name and a story. And anything with a name and a story can be met. Now that the fear has a shape, the dance can truly begin. The old way of the warrior was to see this named fear and immediately attack it, telling himself, "Don't be stupid. That will never happen. Stop being so weak." This is an act of war against yourself, and it only makes the fear stronger, because you are invalidating a part of you that is genuinely trying to protect you. The new way, the way of the dancer, is to approach this named fear with respect. You sheath your sword of judgment and you open a dialogue. You can do this in your journal or in a quiet meditation. You start by acknowledging it. Hello, fear. I see you. I feel your tension in my shoulders and the tightness in my chest. I know you are here. Then, you validate its intention. Thank you for trying to protect me. I know your only job is to keep me safe. This simple act of acknowledgement is profoundly disarming. The dragon, accustomed to being attacked, is momentarily stunned by your peaceful approach. Now, you ask it questions with genuine curiosity. The first is, what are you really trying to protect me from? Listen for the answer that comes from beneath the surface story. The fear of public speaking is not really about the speaking. It is about protecting you from the primal pain of social rejection, of being cast out from the tribe. The fear of intimacy is trying to protect you from the devastating pain of abandonment you may have felt as a child. By understanding its noble, albeit misguided, intention, you can feel compassion for it. The second question is, what are you asking me to pay attention to? This is where the fear transforms from a paralyzing force into a wise consultant. The fear of the meeting might be telling you, pay attention to the fact that you haven't prepared as much as you could. It is offering you practical advice. The fear of a new relationship might be saying, pay attention to the fact that this person has some qualities that remind you of someone who hurt you before. Proceed with awareness. The dance, then, is the act of listening to this feedback and moving with it, not being stopped by it. If the fear's message is that you are unprepared, you do not cancel the presentation. You take its energy and you use it to prepare more diligently. If the fear's message is that you need to be more aware, you do not end the relationship. You move forward with your eyes wide open, committed to setting better boundaries than you did in the past. You are using the dragon's fiery breath not as a thing to be extinguished, but as a light by which to see your path more clearly. You do not get rid of the fear. The goal of this work is not a fearless life. A life without fear is a life without the capacity for love, for growth, for anything that truly matters. The goal is to feel the fear fully, to honor its message, and then to take the next courageous step anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to dance with it. Over time, this dance transforms your relationship with the dragon. It ceases to be a terrifying monster at the mouth of the cave It becomes a familiar, powerful, and respected ally. It is still a dragon. Its power is still immense. But you have learned its rhythms. You know that its fire is not meant to destroy you, but to purify you, to burn away your illusions, and to illuminate your way forward. As we learn to dance with the dragon of fear, we find that it is not the only powerful creature in the caverns of our psyche. Its fire often illuminates another, equally potent and misunderstood energy. A force that, when suppressed, becomes a poison, but when honored, becomes a sacred fuel. It is time to turn our attention to the holy fire of anger. Of all the emotions we have exiled to the shadow, none is more misunderstood, more maligned, and more feared than anger in our collective imagination, particularly within spiritual and self-help circles. Anger is seen as a toxic byproduct, an obstacle to peace, a mark of an unenlightened mind. We are taught to transcend it, to release it, to replace it with love and light. But in our relentless pursuit of a sanitized, conflict-free existence, we have made a grave mistake. We have confused the sacred fire of authentic anger with the destructive wildfire of uncontrolled rage. We have demonized a vital part of our life force, and in doing so, we have rendered ourselves powerless. For true anger, in its purest form, is not the opposite of peace. It is the fierce, unwavering guardian of our peace. When anger is not honored, when it is suppressed and denied a voice, it does not simply vanish. It turns inward, where it becomes a slow-acting poison that sickens the soul. Imagine your anger is a powerful, fast-flowing river. When you are taught that this river is dangerous and unholy, and you build a dam to stop its flow, but the river's energy must go somewhere. The immense pressure builds behind the dam, and the stagnant water begins to fester. This is the nature of suppressed anger. It seeps out in toxic ways. It becomes the poison of passive aggression, the sarcastic comment, the accidental mistake, the cold shoulder that freezes the warmth in a room. It becomes the poison of cynicism and bitterness, coloring your entire perception of the world in shades of gray resentment. For many, this stagnant poison becomes the heavy, leaden weight of depression. Depression can often be understood as anger turned inward. It is the immense life force energy of your own sacred, no being used to attack yourself rather than the situation that is causing you harm. You feel tired, lethargic, and hopeless because the powerful river that is meant to propel you forward and protect your boundaries has been dammed and turned into a murky, toxic swamp within you. For others, the poison manifests as chronic anxiety, the constant, humming fear of the dam breaking, the terror that your own repressed rage will burst forth and destroy everything in its path. And so you spend your life in a state of hypervigilance, not against external threats, but against your own inner power. And eventually, the dam often does break. This is the sudden, terrifying explosion of rage over something trivial, the spilled milk, the traffic jam, an outburst so disproportionate that it frightens you and those you love. This is not healthy anger. This is the catastrophic failure of a system of suppression. To begin healing our relationship with this powerful energy, we must first learn to distinguish the poison of repressed rage from the medicine of sacred anger. Sacred anger is not about hatred or violence. It is one of the cleanest, clearest, and most honorable emotions you are capable of feeling. It is a signal, a pure, bright flame that ignites within you for one of two reasons: a boundary has been violated, or a core value is being transgressed. It is the visceral, full-body no. It is the soul's immune system kicking into gear, identifying an intrusion, and marshaling the energy to restore integrity. It is the loving, protective energy that rises in you when you see a child being mistreated. It is the clarifying fire that burns through confusion when you are being manipulated or disrespected. It is the fuel of every movement for justice and liberation the world has ever known. It is the voice inside you that screams, "This is not right." To deny this energy is to deny your own moral compass and your power to protect what you hold dear. The path to reclaiming this power does not begin with action. It begins with sensation. For those of us who have spent a lifetime suppressing it, our first task is to learn how to simply feel the raw energy of anger in our bodies without immediately judging it or acting on it. Anger is a somatic experience. Notice where it lives in you. Perhaps you feel a surge of heat rising in your chest and neck. Perhaps your fists clench instinctively. Your jaw tightens. Your shoulders tense up towards your ears. Perhaps you feel a buzzing, electric energy coursing up your spine. The first step is to simply allow these sensations to be there. Take a breath and say to yourself, "This is the feeling of anger. This is energy moving through my body." You are separating the pure energy from the story you tell about it. You are learning to hold the fire without getting burned. Consider the story of a woman named Maria. Maria was a classic peacemaker, raised in a family where any expression of displeasure was considered selfish and disruptive. Her core belief was, "My anger will destroy my relationships." As an adult, she was known for being incredibly accommodating, especially at work, where her boss frequently took advantage of her by piling on last-minute projects. Maria's pattern was to smile, say, "Of course, no problem," and then spend her weekend seething with a toxic brew of resentment and self-loathing, which often left her feeling drained and depressed. Through her work, Maria learned to try a new approach. The next time her boss approached her desk on a Friday afternoon, she felt that familiar hot surge in her chest. But this time, instead of instantly forcing a smile, she paused. She took a silent breath and simply felt the heat. She noticed her jaw clenching. She acknowledged, just to herself, "This is anger. Its message is that my boundary around my personal time is being violated." She did not act. She did not yell. She just sat with the raw energy for a single, powerful moment, allowing it to be there. This is the alchemy. Once you have allowed yourself to feel the energy and have clearly received its message, you can then consciously choose how to use that energy as fuel. The anger is the rocket fuel. Your conscious mind is the guidance system. The question then becomes, how can I use this powerful energy to honor its message in a constructive and clear way? For Maria, standing in the truth of her anger gave her a clarity and focus she had never felt before. The fuel of that anger propelled her to speak. She looked at her boss and said, calmly but with an unshakable firmness, "I understand that this is a priority, but I have other commitments and will not be able to get to it before the end of the day. I can put it at the top of my list on Monday morning." She was not aggressive. She was not rude. She was simply clear. The sacred fire of her anger had burned away the fog of her people-pleasing and forged a clean, strong boundary. She had used the fire not to burn the bridge, but to illuminate the property line. This is the power you are reclaiming. It is the power to use the energy of anger to have the difficult but necessary conversation in your relationship, to say no to the family obligation that drains your soul, have to stand up for an injustice you witness in your community. You learn that this sacred fire is not meant to be a destructive wildfire. It is a forge. It is the fire you use to shape a stronger sense of self, to temper your resolve, and to burn away everything that is not in alignment with your truth. Learning to wield the sacred fire of anger is an act of profound self-respect. But as we stand in this newfound power, feeling our fear and our anger, we often come face to face with the deep, painful reason we abandoned these parts of ourselves long ago. We touch the raw nerve of a core belief that we are somehow fundamentally wrong. We are now ready to meet the most sensitive and isolating guardian of the shadow, the paralyzing weight of shame. If fear is the dragon that guards the treasure, and anger is the fire that forges our truth, then shame is the crushing weight of the mountain itself. It is the silent, subterranean force that convinces us we are not worthy of the treasure in the first place. More than a fleeting emotion, shame is a soul-eating state of being. It is the intensely painful feeling of being fundamentally flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. When you feel shame, your primal instinct is not to fight or flee, but to hide, to become small, to disappear entirely. It is the most isolating and paralyzing of all human experiences. For its core message is not that you did something wrong, but that you, in your very essence, are wrong. This is the deepest, most tender layer of the shadow. The reason we lock away so many parts of ourselves to begin with. To begin our journey of healing, we must first make a crucial distinction. One that can change the entire landscape of your inner world. Shame is not the same as guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt is a healthy, adaptive emotion. It is a signal from our conscience that our actions have violated one of our core values or harmed another person. When you feel guilt, it can motivate you to apologize, to make amends, to learn, and to change your behavior for the better. Guilt is focused on your actions, and it can be resolved through action. Shame, however, is a toxic imposter that masquerades as guilt. It is not focused on your behavior. It is a direct assault on your identity. It offers no path to redemption. It simply whispers, or screams, that you are a mistake, that you are broken beyond repair, and that if people knew the real you, they would turn away in disgust. Guilt says, you made a mistake. Shame says, you are the mistake. This distinction is everything, because you can correct a mistake, but you cannot fix a flawed identity. We are not born with shame. It is handed to us. It is a relational wound. Born in the moments when we exposed a vulnerable part of our authentic self and were met not with the warmth of empathy, but with the cold sting of judgment, ridicule, or disgust. Think of the small child who, full of exuberant joy, dances wildly around the living room, only to be told by a parent to stop being ridiculous. Think of the teenager who vulnerably confides a secret crush to a group of friends, only to have that secret shared and laughed about at school. Think of anyone, at any age, who is told that their body, their creativity, their sensitivity, or their dreams are the wrong shape, the wrong size, the wrong kind. In these moments, a searing message is branded onto the soul. That part of you is unacceptable. To be safe and loved, you must hide it. We internalize this external judgment, and it becomes the venomous voice of our own inner critic, the tireless narrator of our own unworthiness. Shame, at its core, is the trauma of broken connection. If shame is born in disconnection, then its antidote can only be found in connection. Shame is like a species of fungus that can only grow in the dark, silent, secret chambers of our heart. It thrives on secrecy and judgment, but it has a kryptonite. Shame cannot survive being spoken and met with empathy. It withers and dies under the warm light of connection. The brilliant researcher Dr. Brené Brown, who has dedicated her life to studying this painful emotion, tells a modern parable through her work. She found that the only variable that separated people with a strong sense of love and belonging from those who struggled for it was the simple belief that they were worthy of love and belonging. The people who were resilient to shame lived by the principles of courage, compassion, and connection. They understood that to be human is to be imperfect, and when they inevitably stumbled and felt the familiar sting of shame, they did not hide. They practiced the courage to speak their story to someone who had earned the right to hear it. They knew who to call a friend, a partner, a therapist who would meet their story not with judgment or advice, but with the simple, healing balm of empathy. The most powerful words in the universe to someone in the grips of shame are, "Me too," or "I've been there," or simply, I'm so grateful you told me. Empathy is the sacred water that washes away the poison of shame. This understanding provides us with a clear pathway for healing. It is not an easy path, for it requires immense courage, but it is a reliable one. The first step is to learn to recognize the voice of shame. It often speaks in absolutes and generalizations. It sounds like, "You are so stupid. You will never be good enough. Who do you think you are? You are a complete failure." The practice here is to simply notice this voice when it appears. To pause and say to yourself, "Ah, that's shame talking. That is not the voice of my true self." This act of mindful awareness creates a crucial sliver of space between you and the shame, allowing you to see that you are the one experiencing shame, not the shame itself. The second step is the courageous act of speaking your shame. This requires discernment. You do not share your most vulnerable stories with just anyone. You share them with people who have proven they are worthy of your trust. People who can meet you with compassion. The goal is not to be fixed, but simply to break the curse of secrecy. You pick up the phone and you say, "I just bombed a presentation at work. And the story I am telling myself right now is that I am a total fraud and I'm going to be fired." By speaking the story, you are telling yourself. You expose the shame to the light. The moment a trusted friend responds with, "Oh, that sounds incredibly painful. I've felt like that so many times." The shame begins to lose its power. It can no longer convince you that you are uniquely and terminally flawed. You have been met with empathy, and you are no longer alone in your struggle. The third, and perhaps most vital, step is to cultivate the practice of self-compassion. This means learning to turn that same empathetic response inward. It means treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a dear friend who was suffering. When the voice of shame attacks you, you consciously introduce the voice of compassion. Instead of "You are such an idiot," you learn to say to yourself, "That was a very difficult and painful experience. It is completely understandable that you feel this way." It takes courage to even try. You place a hand on your heart, a physical gesture of comfort and kindness, and you remind yourself that imperfection is not a personal failing. It is the shared, universal experience of being human. Releasing the weight of shame is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice of building shame resilience. The goal is not to become a person who never feels shame. That is impossible for anyone who dares to live a vulnerable, wholehearted life. The goal is to develop the skills to recognize shame when it shows up, to know that its message of unworthiness is a lie, and to have the tools of courage, compassion, and connection to move through the experience without it dismantling your sense of self-worth. It is the journey of coming to believe in your bones that your worthiness is not up for negotiation. It is your birthright. As we learn to release this crushing weight, we begin to reclaim our inherent value. We start to see how the secret, core belief that we were not enough has fueled so many of our behaviors. It has been the hidden engine behind our desperate need to please, to achieve, and to sacrifice our own needs on the altar of others' approval. We are now ready to examine the behavioral costumes we wear to hide our shame, beginning with the well-worn masks of the martyr and the people pleaser. Beneath the layers of fear, anger, and shame, the shadow expresses itself not just in feelings, but in complex behaviors, in the very roles we play in our lives. It crafts sophisticated costumes for us to wear. Costumes that promise safety and approval, but which ultimately suffocate the soul. Two of the most common and praised of these costumes are those of the people pleaser and its more extreme cousin, the martyr. On the surface, these appear to be noble archetypes. They are the dependable ones, the selfless givers, the saints and saviors who hold families and workplaces together. But in the context of shadow work, we must look deeper. We must recognize these roles for what they are: intricate survival strategies, born of the deep-seated fear that our authentic self is fundamentally unlovable. They are masks we wear to trade our truth for what we hope will be acceptance. Let us first examine the anatomy of the people pleaser. This is the person who walks through life as if it were a field of emotional landmines, constantly scanning the faces of others for the slightest hint of disapproval. Their own opinions, needs, and desires are highly flexible, readily abandoned to maintain harmony. They say yes when their entire being is screaming no. They apologize for things that are not their fault, taking responsibility for the emotional state of everyone around them. Their internal monologue is a constant negotiation against themselves. It's just easier to go along with it. I don't want to cause trouble. If I just make them happy, then I will be safe. They become a social chameleon, so adept at blending in that they forget their own natural colors. The martyr takes this dynamic a step further. The martyr doesn't just passively agree. They proactively seek out opportunities for self-sacrifice. They are the ones who stay latest at the office, who take on the most thankless tasks, who carry the emotional weight of the entire family. Their identity becomes fused with their sacrifice. There is often a subtle, or not so subtle, performance to their suffering, a silent broadcasting of their own goodness through the magnitude of their burden. The unconscious hope is that their immense sacrifice will finally be recognized, that they will be seen as indispensable, and therefore worthy of love. Their mantra is, "Don't worry about me. I'm fine." Even as they are collapsing under the weight of their self-imposed responsibilities. What is the hidden engine driving these seemingly noble behaviors? It is the shame we have just explored. At the core of the people pleaser and the martyr is the secret, terrifying belief, as I am not enough. My authentic self, with all its messy needs, inconvenient opinions, and personal limits, is not worthy of love. This core shame creates a profound fear of rejection and abandonment. For the person trapped in this archetype, saying no feels like a catastrophic risk. It feels like it could trigger conflict, disapproval, or being cast out of the tribe altogether. So, they develop a different strategy for belonging. They decide, unconsciously, if I cannot be loved for who I am, then I will make myself indispensable through what I do. I will become so useful, so helpful, so selfless, that they cannot possibly get rid of me. It is a desperate, exhausting attempt to earn a worthiness that is, in truth, their birthright. But this strategy is built on a fatal paradox. While it aims to secure connection, it inevitably breeds resentment, the very poison that corrodes connection. The giving of the martyr and the people pleaser is rarely clean. It comes with invisible strings attached, an unspoken expectation of appreciation, validation, or reciprocation. They are constantly making deposits of self-sacrifice into a relational bank account. And when they feel their sacrifices are not sufficiently seen or honored, a bitter resentment begins to build. This is the hidden cost. They feel perpetually exhausted, unappreciated, and unseen. Consider the story of a man named James. James was the quintessential family martyr. He worked a 60-hour week at a job he disliked to provide for his family, spent his weekends fixing things around the house, coached his son's baseball team, and never once asked for help or took time for himself. He was, by all accounts, a perfect husband and father. Yet, he was haunted by a quiet, simmering anger and a profound sense of emptiness. His family loved him, but he felt their love was for the role he played, not for the man he was. He was a human doing, not a human being. His journey of healing began with the terrifying realization that he had no idea who he was outside of his function. He had sacrificed his own identity on the altar of his family, and the resentment was poisoning the very love he sought to nurture. The path to liberation from these roles is forged through the courageous act of setting boundaries. For the people pleaser, the word boundary can sound like a declaration of war. It is not. A boundary is not a wall you build to keep people out. It is a fence you build around your own property so that you and others know what is yours to care for. It has a gate, which you can choose to open or close. Boundaries are not about shutting others out. They are about defining yourself. They are the gentle, honest communication of what is okay for you and what is not okay for you. They are the antidote to resentment, because they replace unspoken expectations with clear communication. And paradoxically, healthy boundaries are the precondition for true intimacy. You cannot have a healthy connection with another person if you do not know where you end and they begin. Learning to say no is the fundamental practice. It will feel terrifying at first. The shame voice will scream that you are being selfish, difficult, and unlovable. The work is to tolerate that internal discomfort. You can start small. Say no to a minor social invitation. Say no to a small, additional task at work. You do not need to provide a long, elaborate excuse. A simple, "Thank you for the offer, but I can't make it," or "I'm not able to take that on right now," is a complete sentence. Each time you say a small, honest no, you are casting a vote for your own self-worth. You are teaching your nervous system that you can set a limit and the world will not end. You will not be abandoned. For James, his first boundary was telling the baseball league he would not be coaching the next season. It felt like a monumental failure, but he did it. His next boundary was learning to say to his wife, "I am feeling completely exhausted. I need to go for a walk by myself for an hour." He began to articulate his own needs, not as demands, but as simple truths. At first, his family was confused by the change, but soon, they began to see a man who was more present, more relaxed, and less resentful. They discovered that they loved the real James even more than the exhausted martyr. He learned that by taking care of his own needs, he was not depriving his family. He was giving them the gift of a happier, more authentic husband and father. He was finally able to love them from a place of genuine fullness, not from a place of resentful depletion. Learning to set a boundary is learning to say, "My needs matter." It is the first step out of the prison of pleasing others. But taking off the old costume can leave us feeling exposed and vulnerable. As we stand in this new, uncertain space, we require a gentle inner guide to hold our hand, to soothe our fears, and to treat our fumbling attempts with kindness rather than criticism. We must now learn the profound and healing art of self-compassion. There is a voice inside you that has been with you for most of your life. It is a relentless narrator, a harsh critic, and a merciless judge. It is the voice that speaks up when you make a mistake, when you fail, when you feel vulnerable. It is the voice of your inner critic. And you have likely lived with its commentary for so long that you have come to mistake it for the voice of truth. It tells you that you are not smart enough, not good enough, not worthy. It compares you to others and always finds you lacking. Now, imagine for a moment that you could cultivate a different voice, a voice that is as patient, as wise, and as unconditionally loving as you would be to a dear friend who was in the depths of despair. This is not a fantasy. This is the voice of self-compassion. And learning to cultivate it is the most transformative and healing art you can ever master. To understand self-compassion, let us begin with a simple experiment. Bring to mind a close friend whom you love dearly. Imagine this friend comes to you one day, distraught. They have just been fired from a job they loved, or they have made a significant mistake in a relationship. They feel like a complete failure. In that moment, how would you treat them? You would likely listen with your full attention. You might offer them a hug, a physical gesture of comfort. You would speak to them with words of kindness and reassurance. "This is so hard. I am so sorry you are going through this." It doesn't mean you are a failure. It means you are human and you are hurting. You would remind them of their strengths and that this difficult moment does not define them. Now, hold that image in your mind. And answer this question with radical honesty. When you are the one who has failed, when you are the one who is hurting, how do you speak to yourself? For most of us, the contrast is shocking. We meet our own suffering, not with the warmth we would offer a friend, but with the cold, sharp blade of judgment. We become our own worst enemy. Self-compassion is the simple, radical act of learning to treat yourself with the same kindness you would so readily offer to a friend. This practice is not a vague, sentimental idea. Dr. Kristin Neff, the pioneering researcher in this field, has broken it down into 3 core, actionable components. The first is self-kindness, as opposed to self-judgment. This is the choice to be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than punitive and critical. It is the voice that says, "It's understandable that you feel this way," instead of, "What is wrong with you? Pull yourself together." It is the conscious decision to stop the internal warfare and call a truce. The second component is common humanity, as opposed to isolation. When we fail or suffer, our immediate instinct is often to feel isolated, to believe that we are the only one in the world who is so deeply flawed. This is the voice of shame. Common humanity is the antidote. It is the profound recognition that suffering, imperfection, and failure are not personal afflictions. They are fundamental, unavoidable parts of the shared human experience. To be human is to be imperfect. To be alive is to face challenges. You would remind your struggling friend that they are not alone in their pain, that millions of people have felt this way before. Self-compassion is about remembering to offer that same comforting perspective to yourself. It reconnects you to the tribe of humanity, especially in your moments of perceived failure. The third component is mindfulness, as opposed to over-identification. Mindfulness is the ability to observe our painful thoughts and feelings with a sense of balanced awareness, without suppressing them, but also without being completely swept away by them. When we over-identify, we become our pain. A negative feeling arises and we think, "I am a sad person." A mistake is made and we think, "I am a failure." Mindfulness allows us to take a step back and see the situation with more clarity. I am a person who is feeling a wave of sadness right now. I am a person who has made a mistake. This spacious awareness prevents us from getting lost in the dramatic, catastrophic narrative of our pain, allowing us to hold it with wisdom and perspective. Just as we would help a friend see their situation without getting lost in the drama, it is crucial to understand what self-compassion is not. It is not self-pity. Self-pity is a passive state of getting stuck in your own problems, saying, "Poor me." Self-compassion is an active state of caring that gives you the resilience to deal with your problems. It is not self-indulgence. Many of us carry the false belief that we must be harsh with ourselves to stay motivated. We think our inner critic is a drill sergeant keeping us in line, but research consistently shows the opposite is true. Shame is a terrible motivator. It leads to fear of failure and avoidance. Self-compassion provides the emotional safety that makes it possible to admit our mistakes, to learn from them, and to have the courage to try again. It is the ultimate source of strength and resilience. Finally, self-compassion is not self-esteem. Self-esteem is often conditional, based on our performance and on comparing ourselves to others. We feel good about ourselves when we succeed or when we feel superior. Self-compassion is unconditional. It offers kindness and acceptance not because you are special or above average, but simply because you are a human being, worthy of care. It is there for you in your moments of failure just as much as in your moments of success. So, how do we practice this art? We can begin with a simple, physical gesture. In a moment of distress, place a hand gently over your heart or hold your own arm. The body's nervous system responds to this soothing physical touch, releasing hormones like oxytocin that create feelings of safety and calm. Your body doesn't care that it is your own hand, it just registers the warmth and gentle pressure of care. Then, you can introduce a compassionate phrase, a mantra to guide your self-talk. You can say to yourself, "This is a moment of suffering. That's mindfulness. Suffering is a part of life. That's common humanity. May I be kind to myself in this moment. That's self-kindness. This simple phrase contains all three elements and can be a lifeline in a storm of self-criticism. You can also use your journal to write a letter to yourself about a struggle you are facing. But write it from the perspective of a wise and unconditionally loving friend. What would that friend say to you right now? Allow those words of kindness and wisdom to flow onto the page. Self-compassion is not an accessory to the process of shadow work. It is the very foundation upon which it rests. The shadow, by its very nature, contains the parts of us we have deemed shameful, flawed, and monstrous. To approach this inner territory without the lamp of self-compassion is to risk being consumed by the very self-judgment we find there. Self-compassion is the warm, steady light that allows us to look upon the wounded dragon of our fear, the raging fire of our anger, and the cowering figure of our shame, and see not monsters, but lost and hurting parts of ourselves in desperate need of our love. It is the net that catches us when we stumble, the medicine that soothes the sting of old wounds, and the gentle hand that guides us back home to our own inherent worthiness. With the warm light of self-compassion as our guide and our shield, we no longer need to fear the dark. We have cultivated an inner ally, a source of unconditional support. Fortified by this profound kindness, we are now strong enough to approach the locked vaults of the past, to confront the grievances we have held against others, and most difficult of all, against ourselves. We are now ready to explore the liberating power of forgiveness. Fortified by the gentle strength of self-compassion, we arrive now at a juncture in our journey that, for many, feels like an impassable chasm, the act of forgiveness. The word itself is often a trigger, weighted down by a history of simplistic platitudes and spiritual bypassing. We have been told to forgive and forget, a demand that feels like a profound betrayal of our own legitimate pain. We have been urged to turn the other cheek, which can feel like an invitation for further harm. Let us be clear from the outset, this is not the kind of forgiveness we will speak of here. True forgiveness, the kind that liberates the soul, is not a sweet, sentimental gift you offer to the person who hurt you. It is a fierce, solitary, and revolutionary act of self-preservation. It is not for them. It is for you. Forgiveness is the act of setting a prisoner free, and then discovering that the prisoner was you. To grasp this power, we must first shatter the myths that have turned forgiveness into a cage. The first myth is that forgiveness means forgetting. It does not. Forgiveness is not a form of spiritual amnesia. You will not forget the pain, nor should you. The memories are part of your story, part of the landscape that has shaped you. Forgiveness means remembering the event without the searing, toxic, emotional charge. It is the difference between a perpetually infected, agonizing wound and a clean, silvery scar. The scar tells a story of a wound that has been healed, a story of resilience. The infected wound keeps you trapped in the original moment of injury. The second myth is that forgiveness means condoning or excusing the harmful behavior. This is perhaps the greatest obstacle. Let this be heard with absolute clarity. Forgiveness does not, in any way, I mean that what happened was okay. It is not an absolution. It does not erase the other person's responsibility. You can fully forgive someone for the harm they caused while still acknowledging that their actions were wrong. And you can do so while holding them accountable or, if necessary, removing them from your life entirely. The final myth is that forgiveness requires reconciliation. Forgiveness is a purely internal process. It is something you do by yourself, for yourself. It does not require the other person's apology, their remorse, their participation, or even their presence on this earth. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is an interpersonal process of rebuilding trust. It requires two willing participants. You can forgive someone who is not sorry and will never change, because the act is about your freedom, not their redemption. Why undertake this difficult internal work? Because the alternative, unforgiveness, is a slow and certain poison, holding on to bitterness. Resentment and the endless replaying of past hurts is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The drama, the anger, the grief, it all takes place within your own mind and body. It is your system that is flooded with the stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline. It is your heart that is burdened by the heavy weight of hatred. You are, in effect, allowing the person who hurt you in the past to continue hurting you in the present. You have given them the power to live rent-free inside your head, dictating your emotional state from afar. Forgiveness is the act of eviction. It is the moment you decide that you will no longer allow the events of the past to consume the sacred territory of your present mind. It is the reclaiming of your emotional real estate. The process of forgiving another begins not with a leap, but with a solid grounding in your own pain. You cannot release what you have not first acknowledged. Allow yourself, through journaling or quiet reflection, to feel the full spectrum of your anger and your grief. Give voice to the part of you that was wronged. Only then, when the pain has been honored, can you begin to shift your perspective. This is not about making excuses for the other person, but about seeking to understand, for your own sake, that their actions were almost certainly a product of their own pain, their own unexamined shadow, their own profound lack of awareness. It was their poison that spilled onto you. This understanding does not make the pain go away, but it can depersonalize it, helping you to see that you were caught in the path of their brokenness, and freeing you from the belief that their actions were a reflection of your worth. Forgiveness, then, becomes a conscious declaration of release. It is a ritual you perform in the sanctuary of your own heart. You can say, either aloud or on paper, I acknowledge the deep pain you have caused me. I see it and I honor my own experience. And now, I make the conscious choice to no longer carry this burden. I release the debt I have felt you owe me. I release you from the role you have played in my story. I do this not because you have earned it, but because I am no longer willing to poison myself with this bitterness. I set myself free. As difficult as this is, there is often one person who is even harder to forgive: yourself. We are often our own harshest jailers, locking ourselves away in a prison of self-recrimination for past mistakes. We hold a younger version of ourselves accountable to the wisdom and experience we possess today. An unfair and cruel trial. The logic of self-forgiveness is the same. Continuing to punish yourself for a past mistake does not change the past. It only ruins your present and future. To forgive yourself, you must summon all the self-compassion you have been cultivating. You must look back at the person you were at that time and understand, truly understand, that you were doing the best you could with the awareness, the tools, and the emotional resources you had available to you then. If you had known better, you would have done better. The act of self-forgiveness is also a declaration of release. You must look that younger self in the eye and say, I see the mistake you made, and I see the harm it caused. I also see your confusion, your pain, your lack of awareness. I acknowledge that you did the best you knew how to do. I have learned from your experience. The lesson has been received. And now, I release you. I release myself from the chains of this single story. I am more than my worst mistake. I am worthy of peace. I forgive myself, completely and unconditionally. There is no greater testament to the liberating power of forgiveness than the story of Nelson Mandela. After 27 years of brutal imprisonment for fighting against the evils of apartheid, he had every right to emerge from his cell consumed by a desire for vengeance. The world would have understood. Instead, as he was finally being released, he made a conscious choice. He knew that if he carried the bitterness and hatred for his captors out of the prison gates, he would, in a spiritual sense, still be their prisoner. His body would be free, but his mind and soul would remain incarcerated. In one of the most profound acts of human courage, He chose to forgive. This was not a gift to his jailers. It was the final, non-negotiable step of his own liberation. He refused to allow his enemies to occupy the sacred ground of his own heart. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of reclaiming your power from the past. It is the key that unlocks the chains of resentment and self-recrimination, setting your spirit free. As you release these heavy burdens, you create a profound inner silence, a spaciousness in your soul, and into this newfound quiet, the deeper, more ancient voice of the shadow can finally begin to speak. Not in the language of pain, but in its native tongue, the mysterious and potent language of dreams and symbols. Having cleared the inner landscape through the courageous act of forgiveness, we have created a new kind of silence within us. The clamor of old grievances has subsided. The space once occupied by resentment and self-recrimination is now open. Into this quiet, a deeper and more ancient voice can finally be heard. It does not speak in the linear, logical language of our conscious mind. It speaks in the native tongue of the soul, the language of the deep unconscious, the rich, mysterious, and potent language of dreams and symbols. To enter into the next phase of our work, we must become students of this forgotten dialect. We must learn to listen to the whispers from the other side of midnight. Each night, when you fall asleep, you are not simply shutting down. You are embarking on a journey. You are crossing a border into the vast, inner continent of your own psyche. Sigmund Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. And for good reason. It is in this nighttime realm, when the vigilant ego is resting, that the shadow and the other hidden parts of your soul are free to move, to speak, and to send you messages. These messages are not straightforward memos. They are more like intricate, symbolic poems, surrealist paintings, or fragmented plays. They may seem nonsensical to the rational mind, but to the part of you that understands metaphor and feeling, they are profoundly meaningful. Your dreams are a nightly report on the state of your inner world, revealing your deepest fears, your unacknowledged desires, your unresolved conflicts, and the path toward your own healing and wholeness. To become a student of this language, you must first become a diligent scribe. Dream memories are like snowflakes. They are exquisitely formed, and they melt away almost instantly in the harsh daylight of waking consciousness. Your most essential tool in this practice is the dream journal you have kept by your bed. The work begins even before you fall asleep. As you lie in bed, set a gentle intention. You might say to yourself, "Tonight, I am open to the wisdom of my dreams. I will remember what is important for me to know." This simple act primes your subconscious mind to cooperate. The most critical moment is the transition from sleep to wakefulness. When you first surface in the morning, resist the urge to immediately sit up, check your phone, or think about your to-do list. Lie still for a few moments and try to catch the tail of the dream you were just in. Don't grasp for the plot. Grasp for a feeling, an image, a single word. Then, as soon as you can, reach for your journal and write. Do not worry about grammar, spelling, or narrative coherence. Write in the present tense, as if you are re-experiencing the dream. Not "I was walking down a hall," but "I am walking down a hall. The carpet is red. I feel a sense of dread." This technique brings the dream's energy into the present moment. Record everything. No matter how strange or trivial it seems, the colors, the characters, the emotions, the setting. Once the dream is captured on the page, the sacred work of interpretation can begin. The first and most important rule of this work is to immediately discard any generic dream dictionary. Your psyche speaks in a dialect that is intensely personal. A symbol's meaning is determined by your unique life experiences, memories, and associations. For an electrician, exposed wires in a dream might symbolize a technical problem or a feeling of being dangerously overwhelmed. For a therapist, The same image might symbolize a raw, exposed nerve or a crossed line of communication. The dictionary cannot know you. To understand your dream, you must become the dictionary. Look at the symbols you have written down. And for each one, ask yourself a series of questions. What is my personal, gut-level association with this symbol? If you dreamt of a dog, was it a memory of a beloved childhood pet or a frightening stray that once chased you? The emotional context is everything. How did you feel in the dream in the presence of this symbol? The feeling is the key that unlocks the meaning, and most powerfully, you can ask, if this character or this object were a part of me, which part would it be? A critical, judgmental authority figure in a dream is almost always a representation of your own inner critic. A crumbling house might be a symbol for a part of your life, your health, your career, a relationship that feels unstable and is in need of attention. This is where we meet the shadow in its most raw and archetypal forms. The shadow often appears in our dreams as a pursuing figure, a saboteur, a trickster, or a frightening, wild animal. It is the part of us we are running from. Consider the story of a man named Daniel, who was haunted by a recurring nightmare. In the dream, he would find himself in a dark, labyrinthine alleyway, being relentlessly chased by a menacing, shadowy figure. He could never see its face, but he could feel its terrifying intent. Every night, he would run until his lungs burned, waking up in a cold sweat just as the figure was about to grab him. His waking life was one of stagnation. He felt lost, purposeless, and perpetually anxious. Guided by this work, Daniel decided to try a courageous experiment. Before going to sleep, he set a firm intention. Tonight, if the chase begins, I will stop running. I will turn around and face my pursuer. That night, the dream came as it always did. The familiar panic, the frantic running, but this time, drawing on a well of will he didn't know he had. Daniel skidded to a halt. He turned his body, his heart pounding, to face the darkness behind him. The shadowy figure also stopped. In the dream's strange silence, Daniel found his voice and asked, "What do you want from me?" The figure did not speak. It simply lifted its hands, and in its palms lay a beautiful, old-fashioned brass compass, gleaming in the gloom. It was a compass just like one he had owned and treasured as a boy, a symbol of adventure and direction that he had long since forgotten. The figure wasn't chasing him to harm him. It was chasing him to return something he had lost. His pursuer was his own disowned guidance system, his lost sense of purpose, his own inner navigator that he had been running from for years. The dream broke the spell of his waking stagnation. He understood that the energy he had been labeling as a threat was, in fact, an ally, a part of his shadow desperately trying to offer him a gift. Listening to our dreams is like learning to read the sacred, nightly mail sent from our soul. It is a passive reception of profound wisdom, a way of understanding the coded messages from the deep. But this is a two-way conversation. Once we have received these potent images and met these powerful figures in our sleep, we can learn to invite them into our conscious awareness, to engage them in a waking dialogue. We can learn the art of writing back. This is the practice of active imagination. If dream work is the art of reading the mail sent from your soul, then active imagination is the practice of picking up the phone and calling the sender directly. It is the bridge between the nocturnal world of symbols and the daylight world of your conscious mind. Developed by Carl Jung as one of his most powerful and transformative techniques, active imagination is a method for entering into a waking dialogue with the figures of your unconscious. It is a conscious, deliberate journey into the same symbolic landscape you visit each night in your dreams. But this time, you are awake, aware, and able to participate. You are no longer just the passive dreamer. You are an active explorer, a diplomat sent to establish relations with the hidden parts of your own being. It is essential to understand how this practice differs from ordinary daydreaming or fantasy. When you daydream, your ego is the author and director of the entire production. You create a story to suit your desires. You win the argument. You get the promotion. You find the perfect love. You are in complete control of the narrative. Active imagination requires a radical letting go of this control. Here, your ego agrees to be just one character on the stage. You may set the initial scene, but you then allow the other characters, the figures that emerge from your unconscious, to speak for themselves, to act in ways you do not expect, and to lead the story in directions you could not have predicted. Your primary role is to witness, to interact with integrity, and to be open to surprise. It is the difference between writing a novel and engaging in a real, unscripted conversation. The practice itself begins with creating the same container of safety we have discussed before. Find your sacred space, where you can be quiet and undisturbed for 20 to 30 minutes. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and take several deep breaths to relax your body and quiet the constant chatter of your mind. You are aiming for a state of relaxed alertness, a threshold state between sleeping and waking. Once you feel centered, you must choose a starting point, an entry point into your inner world. This can be a particularly potent image or feeling from a recent dream. It could be a strong emotion you are feeling in the present moment, such as sadness or anger, or it could be a physical sensation in your body, like a tightness in your chest or a knot in your stomach. You take this starting point, and you hold it gently in your mind's eye. Let us imagine a woman named Lena, who has decided to work with her chronic, free-floating anxiety. In her prepared, meditative state, she focuses on the feeling of anxiety itself. She doesn't analyze it. She just feels it. Then, she makes a gentle request. I ask the part of me that is this anxiety to show me its form. What do you look like? She waits patiently. Without expectation, an image begins to coalesce in her mind. It is not the terrifying monster she might have expected. Instead, it is a small, gray, trembling creature, huddled in a dark corner of her ribcage. It looks like a shivering, hairless animal, and it radiates waves of pure panic. Lena's conscious, ego mind immediately wants to get rid of it, to command it to leave, to tell it to stop being so afraid. This is the old pattern of resistance, but the practice of active imagination calls for a different approach. Her task is to interact with this creature as if it were a real and separate being. In her mind's eye, she visualizes her calm, adult self approaching it. She speaks to it, not necessarily out loud, but with an inner voice. Lena, hello. I see you. I didn't know you were here. The creature only shivers more violently, tucking its head between its legs. It does not trust her. Why would it? For years, she has tried to ignore it, medicate it, or drown it out with distractions. Lena, you seem very frightened. What are you afraid of? The creature does not answer in words. Instead, Lena is flooded with the feeling that is the creature's answer, a raw, wordless terror of impending doom, a sense that something awful is about to happen at any second. This is a profound insight. Her anxiety is not a thought pattern, it is a primal, embodied state of panic. Yelling at it to be logical is like yelling at a terrified animal, it only increases the terror. So Lena changes her tactic. She stops questioning it. She simply visualizes her adult self sitting down on the floor a few feet away from the creature. She doesn't try to touch it or fix it. She just offers it her calm, steady presence. She breathes deeply, and she says to it, I am not going to hurt you. I am not going to try to make you go away. I am just going to sit here with you so you are not alone. She holds this image for several minutes, just breathing, just being present with this trembling part of herself. This is the essence of the work. The goal of active imagination is not a quick fix or a dramatic resolution. It is not about slaying the dragon or vanquishing the monster in a single session. The goal is to build a relationship over many sessions. Lena continues to visit this small creature. One day, she might visualize offering it a piece of fruit. Another day, she might gently lay a warm, soft blanket over its shivering body. She is slowly, patiently building trust with a terrified, exiled part of her own psyche. She is learning to reparent this inner aspect of herself, offering it the safety and comfort it has never known. The dialogue does not always have to be verbal. You can engage with these figures through art, by drawing or sculpting the images that arise. You can engage with them through movement, by allowing your body to express the gestures and posture of the inner figure. The medium is less important than the integrity of the engagement, the commitment to listen and respond authentically. Through this sustained practice, a miraculous transformation occurs. Lena's waking anxiety does not vanish overnight, but her relationship to it is fundamentally altered when she feels the familiar pang of anxiety during her day. She no longer meets it with frustration and self-criticism. Instead, she now has an image for it. She visualizes that small, trembling creature inside her, and she sends it a wave of compassion. She puts a hand on her chest and whispers inwardly, "It's okay. Little one, I'm here. We are safe." The internal war is over. She is no longer fighting her anxiety. She is caring for the part of her that feels anxious. Through the profound and intimate dialogue of active imagination, we cease to be at war with ourselves. The monsters we projected onto the world are revealed to be lonely, misunderstood exiles living within us. The shadowy pursuer from our dreams, when faced, may offer us a gift. The inner critic, when questioned, may reveal itself to be a frightened part trying to protect us from failure. We are no longer trying to vanquish the shadow. We are learning to be in relationship with it, to listen to its wisdom, and to care for its wounds. This monumental shift from conflict to communion is the gateway to the ultimate alchemy of this work. It is the beginning of the sacred process of integration. We have journeyed now into the deepest parts of our inner world. We have sat with our fear, honored our anger, and held our shame with compassion. We have listened to the symbolic whispers of our dreams and engaged in courageous dialogue with the figures that live in our psyche. We have done the work of excavation and understanding. Now, we arrive at the great, magical work, the very heart of this entire journey. We arrive at the practice of alchemy. The ancient alchemists spoke of turning lead into gold. We now understand this was not a literal, metallurgical process, but a profound metaphor for the transformation of the human soul. The lead, the prima materia, or first matter, is our raw, messy, unconscious, and devalued shadow. The philosopher's stone, the legendary catalyst for the transformation, is the conscious, loving awareness we have so carefully cultivated. The great work, or magnum opus, is not to discard the lead, but to transmute it. It is the sacred process of integration. To integrate the shadow is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of personal growth. Let us be unequivocally clear about what it is not. Integration is not an excuse to act out your darkest impulses. It is the very opposite. Integrating your inner bully does not give you a license to be cruel to others. Integrating your inner saboteur is not a permission slip to destroy your own success. That kind of behavior, the sudden, uncontrolled eruption of rage or self-destruction, is what happens when the shadow is not integrated. When it is left to fester in the dark until it bursts forth and hijacks the personality. Integration is the conscious, careful, and discerning process of bringing the raw energy of the shadow out of the basement of the unconscious and into the well-lit living room of the conscious mind, where it can be seen, honored, and put to use in a constructive way. It is the act of reclaiming the power you banished long ago and placing it in the service of your highest self. Think of the raw, explosive energy of rage, which you have learned to meet and feel in your body. To integrate this energy does not mean you become an angry person who yells at everyone. That is the unconscious expression. To integrate it means you consciously harness the pure power that lies within that rage. The lead of rage is transmuted into the gold of clear, unwavering boundaries. It becomes the fuel for passionate, focused action. It becomes the courage to speak truth to power and to fight for what is right in the world. You have taken the raw, destructive power of a wildfire and channeled it into the clean, powerful engine of a generator, available to you when you need it. Consider the shadow trait of laziness, a quality many of us have been taught to despise. To integrate laziness does not mean you quit your job and do nothing. It means you look beneath the judgmental label and find the hidden wisdom. The lead of laziness holds the golden truth of the body's deep need for rest, for rejuvenation, for unstructured being. To integrate it is to build the practice of sacred rest into your life, to honor your natural cycles of energy, and to develop the wisdom to know when to push and when to pause. It becomes the antidote to burnout and the key to sustainable creativity. Even paralyzing fear can be transmuted. You do not integrate it by becoming reckless or foolhardy. You integrate the intelligence within the fear. You honor its message to pay attention. The lead of neurotic anxiety is transformed into the gold of healthy caution, of gain intuition, of the ability to accurately assess risk before you take a courageous leap. The fear no longer stops you, it informs you, making your courageous acts not just bold, but wise. This alchemical process invites us to look at the negative labels we have carried for a lifetime and to find the hidden gold within them. Were you told, as a child, that you were too sensitive? The integration of this trait means you stop seeing your sensitivity as a liability and begin to own it as your superpower. The lead of being too sensitive becomes the gold of profound empathy, of deep intuition, of a rich connection to art and beauty, and of an almost psychic ability to read the emotional energy of a room. You say, yes, I am sensitive, and it is the source of my greatest gifts. Were you called stubborn, you can reclaim that lead and transmute it into the gold of unwavering perseverance. You are not indiscriminately obstinate. You are resilient and deeply committed to your core values. You have grit. Were you told you were too much, too loud, or too intense? You can integrate this by owning the magnificent vibrancy of your life force. You are not too much. You have a great capacity for passion, for joy, for leadership, for living a life that is writ large. Integration is the act of taking the very words that were used as stones to harm you and realizing they are, in fact, precious gems. The result of this sustained alchemical work is wholeness. Wholeness is not perfection. Perfection is an ego-driven fantasy of being flawless, of having only a light side. Wholeness is a soul-centric reality of being complete. It is the ability to contain all of yourself, your light and your dark, your strength and your vulnerability, your nobility and your pettiness within the compassionate vessel of your own awareness. The war between the different parts of you is over. The house is no longer divided against itself. The basement has been cleaned out, its treasures brought upstairs, and its windows open to the light. The entire house is now a home. From this inner state of wholeness, authenticity is born. Authenticity is the external expression of your internal integration. When you are no longer hiding or fighting parts of yourself, you can finally show up in the world as a unified being. Your words align with your actions. Your outer presentation matches your inner reality. You become trustworthy and magnetic. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real. There is no longer a gap between the person you pretend to be and the person you are. The performance is over. You are simply, powerfully, and peacefully yourself. You have turned your own lead into your own gold. The great alchemical work is complete when you realize the lead was never something to be discarded, but was the very substance of the gold itself. This inner unification, this profound sense of wholeness, is not a static achievement. It is a new way of being. And this new way of being will now radiate outward from the core of you, fundamentally altering the way you see and are seen. It will inevitably reshape the most potent and challenging laboratories for our growth, our relationships with others. As you become whole within yourself, the world outside you begins to shift in response. The principles of this inner work of meeting the unknown with curiosity and compassion do not remain confined to your solitary practice. They ripple outward, and there is no area where these ripples are felt more powerfully, more immediately, and more profoundly than in your intimate relationships. A relationship is the ultimate crucible for the soul. It is a sacred and often mercilessly accurate mirror, held closer to your face than any other. The person you choose to love, to build a life with, to be your most vulnerable with, will inevitably become the primary activator of your deepest wounds and your most hidden shadow material. This is not a sign of a flawed relationship, it is the sign of a real one. A relationship with enough depth to reach the places that need healing. Why does intimacy trigger our shadow so intensely? Because we come to our partners not just as the adults we are today, but as the children we once were, carrying a backpack full of unmet needs. Unconsciously, we look to our partner to be the perfect parent we never had, to provide the unconditional love, the absolute safety, and the perfect attunement that we craved as a child. We place upon them the impossible expectation that they will heal our original wounds. So when our partner, being a beautifully flawed human themselves, inevitably fails to meet this divine standard when they are distracted while we are speaking, when they need space, when they express a criticism, it doesn't just feel like a minor, present-day slight. It rips the scab off the original wound. Their distraction feels like the original invalidation. Their need for space feels like the original abandonment. Their criticism feels like the original shame. The emotional charge is so immense because the current event is amplified by a lifetime of stored pain. In an unconscious relationship, this moment becomes a catalyst for war. The default response is to blame the other person for our pain. You made me feel this way. If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't be so angry. This framework casts you as the victim and your partner as the perpetrator. It is a dead-end street that leads only to a cycle of accusation, defensiveness, and escalating conflict. The great turning point, the shift from an unconscious relationship to a conscious one, comes when you learn to see your triggers not as an attack from your partner, but as a gift from your own soul. Your partner's action is merely the trigger. The explosive charge of the bullet was already inside you. Waiting, your emotional overreaction is a flare, fired from a deep, unhealed part of you, illuminating precisely where your next piece of work lies. The trigger is a map, pointing directly to the next piece of your shadow that is asking for your attention. Your partner has not wounded you. They have simply shown you where you are already wounded. This understanding revolutionizes communication. It moves from the language of blame to the language of radical responsibility. Let us imagine a couple, Mark and Lisa. For years, they have been trapped in a painful cycle. When Mark wants a night out with his friends, Lisa is consumed by a powerful anxiety that quickly turns to anger. Her old, unconscious way of communicating this was an attack. You are so selfish. You don't care about me at all. Why do you always have to abandon me? This communication, rooted in blame, forces Mark into a defensive corner. A might lash out, saying, "You are so controlling. I'm not abandoning you. I'm just seeing my friends." They are no longer talking about the issue at hand. They are locked in a battle of character assassination, and both feel misunderstood and alone. Now, let us imagine Lisa has been doing her shadow work. She has met her inner child and understands her deep-seated fear of abandonment. She knows this trigger is hers. The next time the situation arises, she can choose a different path. She can wait for a calm moment, take a breath, and speak from a place of ownership. She might say, "I want to share something that feels very vulnerable. When you make plans to go out with your friends, it activates a very powerful fear of abandonment inside me. I know, logically, that you are not abandoning me. And I know this is my own wound, probably from my childhood. But the feeling of panic is very real and very intense for me. I'm not asking you to change your plans, but I wanted you to understand what is happening in my inner world. So maybe we can navigate it together. Do you feel the difference? The entire energy has shifted. She is no longer attacking Mark. She is inviting him into her inner experience. She is taking full responsibility for her feelings while also being honest about their impact. This approach makes it possible for Mark to respond not with defensiveness, but with empathy. He might say, "Wow, thank you for trusting me enough to tell me that. That must feel awful. I'm not going to cancel my plans. But what could I do to help you feel more secure while I'm out?" A war has been transformed into a collaboration. They have stopped being adversaries, fighting over who is right, and have become allies on the shared project of creating a secure and loving relationship. They might decide he can send a quick, reassuring text during the night. She might decide to plan a comforting activity for herself, like a bath and a movie, consciously reparenting her own inner child during that time. They are now co-creating a healing experience. This is the ultimate potential of a conscious relationship, to become a safe container where both partners can bring their shadow parts into the light and have them be met with love. True intimacy is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to navigate conflict with the shared understanding that you are both just dealing with your own unhealed material. It is the profound safety of being able to say, "My shame is getting triggered right now," or "My inner tyrant is coming out," and having your partner understand. Not as an excuse, but as an explanation. It is the experience of being fully seen and loved, not in spite of your darkness, but including it. Your relationship becomes your greatest spiritual practice, a living laboratory for integration. By transforming your intimate relationships into crucibles for conscious healing, you learn the universal principles of responsibility, empathy, and grace. This new way of relating inevitably ripples outward, touching every person you interact with. But the journey of integration doesn't just heal your connection to others. It fundamentally alters your connection to your own unique purpose in the world. It allows you to finally address the profound relationship we have with our work, our potential, and our sacred calling. For much of this journey, we have been courageous divers, descending into the dark and murky waters of our psyche to retrieve what has been lost. We have faced fear, anger, and shame. But shadow work is not solely an exploration of darkness. It is equally, and perhaps even more importantly, a reclamation of our own brilliant, dazzling light. Within the shadow lies not only our disowned pain, but also our disowned power, our repressed magnificence, our buried treasure. This is the great, joyful secret of the work, the discovery of what Jungian analysts call the golden shadow. It is the repository of all the positive, beautiful, and powerful qualities that we, for one reason or another, felt we were not allowed to own. Now, we turn our attention from healing our wounds to unearthing our gold. We have already learned to see our negative projections as a mirror, to recognize the traits that irritate us in others as disowned parts of ourselves. The same principle applies to our light. Think of the people you admire with an intensity that borders on awe or even a touch of painful envy. The charismatic leader who speaks with such effortless confidence. The artist whose creativity seems boundless. The friend who radiates a deep sense of inner peace. We often place these individuals on a pedestal, seeing them as possessing a kind of magic that we ourselves could never access. But the intensity of your admiration is a clue. It is a homing signal from your own soul. The brilliant qualities you see in them are a direct reflection of the very same qualities that lie dormant and unclaimed within you. You are drawn to their light because it is your own. Why would we ever disown our own positive traits? We do it for the same reason we disown our darkness: to survive, to belong, To be loved, perhaps as a child. Your natural intelligence was shamed as showing off. So you learned to hide your brilliance, to make others comfortable. Perhaps your innate leadership was labeled as bossy. So you suppressed your ability to take charge. Perhaps your wild, artistic creativity was dismissed as impractical and a waste of time. So you packed it away in favor of a more sensible path. We learned to dim our own light to fit into the lampshades provided for us by our family and our culture. The golden shadow, therefore, is filled with our highest potentials, our courage, our genius, our charisma, our artistic talents, our profound wisdom. And when we see these qualities shining brightly in another person, it stirs a deep and often painful longing. For we are witnessing a living example of our own unlived life. To begin the excavation of this gold, we must become archaeologists of our own joy. Look back to your childhood. Before the world had a chance to tell you what was practical or possible, what did you love to do? What activities made you lose all track of time? Did you spend hours building elaborate cities out of blocks, expressing an innate architectural genius? Did you write fantastical stories, channeling a natural gift for narrative? Were you always organizing the neighborhood kids into complex games, demonstrating a talent for leadership and community building? Did you love to take things apart just to see how they worked? A sign of a curious, engineering mind. These childhood passions are not trivial or silly. They are pure, unfiltered communications from your soul, pointing directly to the nature of your true calling. Somewhere along the way, many of us were told that these loves were not a viable way to make a living. So we buried them. But the treasure map is still there, waiting for you to find it again. Just as we fear our darkness, we also carry a profound and often more powerful fear of our own light. The poet Marianne Williamson wrote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." To truly own your gold, to step into the full radiance of your power and talent, is a terrifying prospect. To be brilliant is to be visible. And to be visible is to be a target for criticism and jealousy. To own your power is to accept a new level of responsibility in your life. To follow your true calling might mean disappointing the expectations of others or risking financial security. It is often far safer to play small, to stay in the shadows, to admire the light of others from a safe distance rather than daring to shine our own. This fear of our own magnificence is a core component of the golden shadow. So how do we integrate this buried gold? We do it not through one grand, dramatic gesture, but through a series of small, consistent acts of reclamation. Consider the story of an accountant named Arthur. Arthur was a good man, diligent and responsible. His life was one of spreadsheets, balanced budgets, and predictable order. Yet, in his private hours, he found himself obsessed with the lives of wildly creative people. He would lose hours watching documentaries about painters, reading biographies of musicians, and scrolling through the work of photographers, all with a feeling of deep, wistful longing. He told himself the familiar story, "I'm just not a creative person. I don't have a single artistic bone in my body." Through this work, Arthur came to realize that his intense admiration was a projection of his own golden shadow. He remembered, faintly at first, the pure joy he had felt as a boy while drawing for hours on end. A passion his practical father had gently discouraged in favor of a stable career path. The integration for Arthur did not mean he had to immediately quit his accounting job and declare himself an artist. That all-or-nothing thinking is a trap of the ego. The true work was far smaller and more profound. Arthur signed up for a beginner's pottery class at his local community center. He went that first Tuesday night, terrified and feeling like a complete imposter. But the moment his hands touched the cool, wet clay on the spinning wheel, something deep within him awakened. A sense of play, of creation, of pure, Unadjudicated flow washed over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since he was a child. This weekly class became the anchor of his new life. It did not replace his career, but it infused it, and everything else, with a new sense of joy. By honoring this small piece of his golden shadow, he began to feel more whole, more alive. This newfound vitality made him a better one in essence, more engaged husband and father. It even made him a more creative problem solver at his accounting firm. He had not abandoned his life. He had enriched it beyond measure by reclaiming a piece of his own buried gold. This is the path for all of us. Look to what you admire. Listen for the echoes of your lost childhood loves. Identify one aspect of your golden shadow that is calling to you. Then, ask yourself, what is one small, manageable step I can take this month to honor it? You do not need to quit your job. You just need to begin. Sign up for that online coding class you've been eyeing. Join a local choir. Buy a canvas and some cheap paint. Write the first page of the book you've been dreaming of. Give yourself permission to be a beginner, to be clumsy and imperfect. Unlocking your golden shadow is the joyful homecoming of this work. It is the realization that the treasure you were seeking was not only buried in the darkness but also shining in plain sight, reflected in the eyes of those you admired. By consciously weaving these golden threads of your lost talents and passions back into the fabric of your daily life, you do more than simply find a hobby. You begin to align your life with your soul's deepest calling, creating a profound sense of meaning and purpose. This alignment is the very essence of an authentic life. We have walked a long and winding path together. We began by hearing a faint echo in an empty room, the whisper of a self we had lost. We dared to name the shadow, that vast, unseen continent within us. We descended into its territory, learning to see our projections in the mirror of the world. We became archaeologists of our own past, uncovering the family blueprints that shaped our inner architecture. We met the vulnerable inner child and offered it our care. We built a sacred space for our work and learned to use our journal as a portal to the deep. We danced with our fear. We harnessed the fire of our anger. And we stood with courage in the face of our shame. We learned the liberating art of forgiveness. We listened to the symbolic language of our dreams, engaged in dialogue with our hidden parts, and began the alchemical work of integrating our darkness and our light. We have arrived, not at an endpoint, but at a new beginning. We have arrived at the threshold of an authentic life. To live authentically is not to achieve a state of flawless perfection. The goal of this journey was never to create a polished, idealized version of yourself, free from all darkness and neurosis. That is a fantasy of the ego. The authentic life is a reality of the soul, and it is far more messy, more textured, and infinitely more beautiful. Authenticity is the courageous, moment-by-moment commitment to be in harmony with the totality of who you are. It is the end of the great internal war. You no longer see yourself as a battleground between your good parts and your bad parts. You see yourself as a vast and varied kingdom, and you are the wise, compassionate sovereign who rules over it all. You honor your light and you honor your shadow, for you understand that you need both to be whole. Think of your life as a great, ancient tree. For years, you may have focused only on the branches that reached for the sun, trying to produce the most beautiful leaves and flowers, while ignoring, or even fearing, the roots. But a tree's strength does not come only from its upward reach. It comes equally from its downward descent. To grow tall and withstand the storms of life, a tree must sink its roots deep into the dark, hidden earth. Those roots are gnarled, tangled, and unseen, but they are the source of the tree's stability and nourishment. An authentic life is like this tree. It unashamedly reaches for the sun of its highest potential, its golden shadow, while also acknowledging and drawing strength from its deep, complex root system, its personal history, its wounds, its ancestral heritage, its connection to the dark, fertile soil of the human condition. What does this look like in practice? One of the first hallmarks of an authentic life is that you begin to navigate by an internal compass. For most of your life, you may have been guided by external forces, the expectations of your parents, the pressures of your peer group, the demands of your culture. You were constantly checking the weather outside of yourself to know which way to go. Now, through this deep inner work, you have unearthed your own true north. Your decisions, from the monumental to the mundane, they begin to flow from your own core values. You know what matters to you, and you use that knowledge as your guide. This doesn't mean you become selfish or disregard others. It means you stop betraying yourself in the name of pleasing others. From this inner knowing, your boundaries become both clearer and kinder, because you are no longer afraid of the anger or disapproval of others, having learned to dance with your own. You can state your needs and limits with a calm, peaceful clarity. The word no is no longer a declaration of war. It is a simple statement of fact, an act of self-respect, and paradoxically, with stronger fences, your heart can be more genuinely open. You can love more freely and generously because you are not secretly afraid of being consumed or taken advantage of. Your yes becomes a full-bodied, enthusiastic yes, because it is no longer given out of obligation or fear. This deep-rootedness gives you a profound sense of resilience. When the inevitable storms of life arrive, a heartbreak, a professional failure, a loss, you will still sway. You will still lose some leaves, but you will not break. You have access to a source of strength that is not dependent on external circumstances. You know how to sit with difficult emotions because you know they are messengers, not monsters. You have touched the core of your own being, and you know that it is whole and unbreakable, regardless of the weather. This leads to a fundamental shift from the pursuit of happiness to the cultivation of wholeness. Our culture is obsessed with happiness, an often fleeting emotional state that depends on things going our way. This pursuit can become an exhausting chase, a desperate attempt to avoid the natural and necessary sorrows of life. Wholeness is a more sustainable, more profound state of being. A whole life is not one that is perpetually happy. It is one that is perpetually real. It has room for everything, for joy and for grief, for success and for failure, for certainty and for doubt. It is rich and meaningful because it excludes nothing. You stop trying to live a happy life and you begin to live a true life, finding a deep and abiding peace in your capacity to hold it all. Ultimately, this entire journey is about moving from a life lived by default to a life lived by design. A life by default is lived according to the unconscious scripts you were handed as a child. It is reactive and often feels as though it is happening to you. Through the work of excavating your shadow and reclaiming your light, you have become the conscious architect of your own existence. You are no longer living out someone else's blueprint. You are designing your own. You are choosing your values, your relationships, and how you share your gifts with the world with intention and awareness. You have taken your hands firmly off the wheel of your life, not to let go, but to build a better vehicle. And now you are driving, guided by your own inner compass, toward a horizon of your own choosing. To live an authentic life is to live like the great tree, rooted in the totality of your being, and reaching for the sun of your highest potential. But a tree is never finished growing. It is a living process, constantly adapting, deepening, and expanding, the journey to wholeness. Therefore, as no final destination, shadow work is not a task you complete, but a practice you inhabit for a lifetime. So, the final question remains: how do we continue this beautiful, lifelong dance? We have reached the end of this guided portion of our journey together. We have traveled from the first, faint whispers of the disowned self, down into the profound depths of the human psyche, and have emerged into the light of a new and more authentic way of being. There can be a tendency, upon reaching a milestone like this, to feel a sense of finality, as if a great task has been completed once and for all. But the goal of this work was never to fix you and send you on your way. It was to provide you with a map and a set of tools for a lifelong expedition. For the psyche is not a problem to be solved. It is a garden to be tended. You do not weed a garden once and expect it to remain pristine forever. It requires constant, loving, and patient cultivation. So we must now speak of how you continue this beautiful work. How you tend your own sacred garden for the rest of your life. The first and most important shift in perspective is to understand that the path of healing is not a straight line, but a spiral. You will revisit the same themes throughout your life: your relationship with fear, your patterns of people-pleasing, your wounds around abandonment or shame. The ego mind can become frustrated by this, interpreting it as a failure. It will say, "I thought I already dealt with this, why is this coming up again?" But you are not going backward. You are simply circling back to the same point on the landscape, but from a higher vantage point on the spiral staircase of your own consciousness. Each time you revisit an old wound, you do so with more wisdom, more compassion, and more resources than you had before. You can see the old pattern with new eyes. This is not a regression, it is an opportunity for deeper integration. To embrace this work for a lifetime is to embrace the humbling, beautiful, and cyclical nature of your own growth. To tend your garden, you must continue to use the tools you have learned here. The most essential of these is the daily practice of mindfulness, of paying attention to your own inner world. This is the act of daily weeding. Your emotional triggers are the first sprouts of new weeds. When you find yourself in a moment of disproportionate anger, anxiety, or judgment toward another person, this is your signal. It is the garden telling you where a new weed of projection is taking root. Instead of blaming the other person, you can now pause, turn inward, and ask with curiosity, hello there. What is this showing me about my own garden? What part of my shadow is being activated right now? This simple, consistent act of self-reflection prevents the weeds from overgrowing the entire landscape. Your journal remains your most faithful and versatile gardening tool. It is your spade for turning over the soil of your thoughts, your logbook for tracking the patterns of the seasons, and your sacred space for communicating with the deep roots of your being. A regular journaling practice, even for just 10 minutes a day, will keep you connected and aware. Continue to dialogue with the parts of you that arise. Continue to write your unsent letters when you feel the poison of resentment building. Continue to honor the symbolic language of your dreams. And your practice of meditation is the gentle, nourishing rain that your garden needs to thrive. It is in the quiet space of meditation that you cultivate the calm awareness necessary to see your inner world clearly, without judgment. Just as a real garden has seasons of intense, fruitful growth and seasons of quiet dormancy, so too will your inner work. Honor these rhythms. There will be times for deep, intensive work, and there will be times for quiet integration and rest. Do not try to force constant breakthroughs. The soil needs time to absorb the nutrients. This work, while deeply personal, should not be done in complete isolation. A garden thrives in a healthy ecosystem, and you will thrive with the support of fellow gardeners. It is vital to seek out and nurture relationships with people who understand and honor this kind of inner journey. This may be a trusted friend, a loving partner, a skilled therapist who specializes in depth psychology, or a community group, such as a men's or women's circle. These people are not there to tend your garden for you. That is always your work, but they provide encouragement, witness your growth, and can share tools and insights from their own practice. Most importantly, when you are lost in the weeds, they can gently remind you of the beautiful flowers you have already cultivated. They can reflect your own light back to you when you have forgotten how to see it. This community is the sunlight and companionship that helps everything grow stronger. Finally, the ethos of the lifelong gardener must be one of profound kindness and celebration. You must let go of any notion of creating a perfect garden. Your soul is not a manicured French formal garden. It is a wild, vibrant, an ever-changing English cottage garden. There will always be new weeds. There will be seasons of drought and seasons of bounty. There will be unexpected pests and surprising, beautiful volunteer flowers that you did not even plant. Your task is to meet it all with curiosity and care. And you must remember to celebrate your progress. Pause regularly. Look back over your shoulder at the path you have traveled. Acknowledge the new blossoms of self-compassion that are flowering where once there were only the thorns of self-criticism. Notice the strong, sturdy trunk of your boundaries, which allow you to stand tall. See the new shoots of your golden shadow, reaching for the sun through this lifelong dance. Your relationship with your shadow is utterly transformed. It is no longer a dark, terrifying, and neglected corner of your property. You come to see it as the most fertile and sacred soil in your entire garden. It is the rich, dark compost of all your life experiences from which your most profound strength, your deepest wisdom, and your most vibrant aliveness grows. The shadow is no longer an enemy to be feared, but a respected and vital ally. The dance has become your nature. As you learn to dance this lifelong dance, to tend this sacred garden with patience and love, you discover the ultimate truth of this journey. You did not just come here to reclaim a self that was lost. You came here to participate in the ongoing creation of a self that is more whole, more powerful, and more authentically you than you ever dared to imagine. This is the great work and the great joy of your life. We began this journey together by listening for an echo, the faint and distant call of a self we felt we had lost. We followed that sound into the deep, and in the quiet of our own inner world, we found so much more than we expected. We stood at the mirror and learned to see our own projections. We became archaeologists of our own history, unearthing the foundations of our being. We met the lonely child within and became its parent. We learned to dance with the dragon of fear, to wield the sacred fire of anger, and to stand in the storm of our shame, cloaked in the radical warmth of self-compassion. We unlocked the chains of the past through forgiveness and began to read the symbolic language of our dreams. We have done the great alchemical work of turning our lead into gold, not by discarding our darkness, but by courageously integrating it into the wholeness of who we are. The greatest truth to carry forward from this journey is this: the goal was never to eliminate the shadow. It was to end the war against it. The path to a powerful, authentic life is not paved with the denial of our darkness, but with the courage to embrace our own complexity. Wholeness is not a state of perfect, untarnished light. It is the ability to hold both your light and your darkness in a single. Compassionaci, embracci. You are not broken, and you never were. The self you thought was lost was never gone. It was simply waiting, patiently, in the wings of your awareness, for you to turn around and finally invite it onto the stage. The peace you seek is not a placid, distant shore free of storms. It is the unshakable anchor you have now discovered within yourself. The part of you that can remain steady and present, no matter how fiercely the winds may blow. You now hold the map. You now possess the tools. The work of tending the beautiful, wild garden of your soul is now yours to continue. Listen for the whispers of your dreams. Pay attention to the mirrors held up for you in your relationships. Greet your triggers as teachers. Nurture the golden seeds of your unique potential. And above all, treat yourself with a profound and revolutionary kindness through every step. The journey from this moment forward is yours to design. Walk it with courage, walk it with curiosity, and walk it with the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows that they are, and have always been, completely and beautifully whole.